The Tour de France, presented by the NBC Sports Group.
The Passage du Gois, a narrow path on the western coast of France. Twice a day, the tide shifts and the Atlantic Ocean blankets the pavement. The tide has subsided, and that's a good thing, considering it's the starting point for the 2011 Tour de France. Three-time Tour champ Alberto Contador is the star of our show, but he has to sign in just like everybody else.
In some special men, there is an appetite for the audacious, a passion for taking a long look at the impossible and turning it into a brilliant, breathtaking goal. A race around a country, 2,000 miles in 3 weeks. Every road, a front row seat. Every day, a battle at full tilt. Every moment, a half inch from disaster.
There's been a crash.
For over a century, the Tour de France has called the hardest men in sport to the toughest test in cycling. Frenchman Jacques Anquetil, the first to win 5 tours. The cannibal Eddy Merckx, the masterpiece of fortitude, Bernard Hinault, and pioneer Greg LeMond, who carved an American trail for the Tour de France's ultimate king.
Lance Armstrong, 7 times a winner of the Tour de France.
From the claustrophobic fury of the peloton, individual greatness rises to golden triumph. This year, 3-time Tour champion Alberto Contador returns to defend his title, earned just seconds ahead of last year's runner-up Andy Schleck. Theirs is a high alpine rivalry, clawed out on the Tour's most unforgiving terrain, where a split second of misfortune can deliver historic consequence.
Schleck's chain's off. His chain has jammed and Contador's gone. At this moment in time, he could be losing his yellow jersey.
Should either man falter this year, a pack of proven veterans ride in wait. From Lance's former team, Americans Levi Leipheimer and Chris Horner wield a 2-headed attack, and a U.S. rider with a Dutchman's name, Christian Van de Ven, will try to shift last year's bad luck into a podium performance, while 2-time bridesmaid Aussie Cadel Evans pushes to finally find a winning form. Across France's poetic beauty, scorching the streets.
He is absolutely impossible to beat.
Weaving through history and scaling countless giants, the peloton journeys to discover its strongest man. This is an epic crucible, where the suffering is profane. The commitment required, absolute. A race for no ordinary men, but for those with a hunger to say yes when good sense screams no. It is a triumph over the impossible. This is the Tour de France.
France's Vendée region, site of this year's Grand Départ. It's the world's most gorgeous yet demanding race. The fans flock to the start at the Passage du Gois. We eagerly anticipate the action at the finish in Mont de Alouettes. Welcome, everyone, to your Cadillac pre-race show as we count down to the 98th edition of the Tour de France. I'll be with you for the next 23 days as we grind through 21 grueling stages. The man who'll guide all of us through this is Tour veteran Bob Roll. Bob, no huge surprises in this one. The eagerly anticipated rematch, Alberto Contador and Andy Schleck last summer, just 39 seconds separated these two. And I think it's safe to say they'll go head-to-head once more.
Absolutely. In July, all eyes turn to cycling in the Tour de France. Alberto Contador, the defending champion, 3-time winner of the Tour, will go up against Andy Schleck. Once again, Andy Schleck, the young upstart, ascendant in cycling. They've switched teams, so it's a little bit different than last year, but the rivalry will be still the same, one of the most intense in all of sports.
So Schleck and Contador, they are the headliners of this one, but as so often is the case, the star of the show may be the course itself. It's got twists, turns, peaks, and valleys, and it can be both figuratively and literally breathtaking. It's a race measured by so many years of tradition. But in 2011, change has arrived at the Tour de France. For just the second time in 40 years, the race begins with a road stage, rolling out over the famous Passage du Gois, an ocean causeway submerged twice a day by the tides, and soon to be swarmed by cyclists. And for stage 2, another notable change hits the Tour de France map. The team time trial returns.
Team time trial is the one event where that guy, Joe Public, can say, oh, now I get it. I see why cycling is a team sport and not an individual sport.
Next, the peloton heads north toward Brittany and the much-anticipated Stage 4 finish at the Mur de Bretagne, known as the Alpe d'Huez of the area. It's another challenging moment in an unpredictable opening week, where wind and rain can cause havoc, and a single crash can disrupt the order of the entire race. The next 3 days present an opportunity for the sprinters.
Cavendish is there, and he's done it.
The Massif Central beckons for stages 8 and 9, with a mountaintop finish at Superbest. Stage 12 marks the beginning of the Pyrenees, highlighted by 2 more mountaintop finishes. Luz Ardiden, site of Lance Armstrong's unforgettable win in 2003, and Plateau de Bay.
It's just such a brutal climb. There's just no pretty way to get up that. Everybody suffers.
2 transfer stages carry the peloton northeast to the Alps, celebrating their 100th birthday in the Tour with an epic degree of difficulty. Stage 18 summits at the legendary Galibier for the first time ever, marking the highest finish in Tour history. Then it's a visit to cycling nirvana, Alpe d'Huez.
I love Alpe d'Huez. Of all the climbs there, it's the most famous.
You know, the crowds are always just massive on Alpe d'Huez.
The individual time trial will bring a fitting conclusion to the competitive fury of the race before the greatest celebration in cycling, the final stage on the Champs-Élysées, and the unparalleled thrill of a victory celebration in Paris. Let's break down what you can expect in 2011. 10 flat stages, 6 high mountain stages with 4 summit finishes. 3 medium mountain stages, 1 team time trial, which is on day 2 of the Tour. And oddly enough, the individual time trial, easy for me to say, is on the second to last day. So, with all that information I'm throwing at you right now, what is standing out about this year's Tour?
Week number 1, no prologue. That means we're out on the open roads for the first stage, and all 198 riders have a chance for the yellow jersey. It will be pandemonium at the finish. Also, the team time trial is back after a year hiatus. It's great to see that. Stage number 4 is a very tough climb. The Mur de Bretagne is a little hard climb there, so the GC contenders will have to pay attention very early in the Tour de France this year. It's a great opening week.
So week 1 could be unpredictable. Perhaps the only thing that has been predictable lately, oddly enough, is the weather. It has been sunny. It has been beautiful. It has been clear. Not a cloud in the sky, except for perhaps the one that's looming over the head of the defending champ.
Yes, I remember it perfect. It was a day I will never forget. It was the 24th of August. A doctor from the UCI called me and told me that there was a problem with one of my samples.
Reigning Tour de France champion Alberto Contador
Positive test for
tested positive for a banned substance. It's another black eye for the sport of cycling.
I can't express the feelings I had, but in that moment I was shocked. I couldn't believe that I had actually tested positive. Eventually, as the time passed, the reality of the situation set in.
A B sample confirmed the initial results, and despite a very small concentration of the substance, the UCI suspended Contador.
Yes, I did think about quitting cycling. Although cycling is very important to me, there are other things more important than the bike.
Contador had his positive test on the second rest day of the Tour and 1 day before the grueling ride to the top of the Col du Tourmalet.
Contador's going. He's got a huge effort. Alberto Contador.
But at a press conference Thursday, he blamed the results on contaminated meat. He also made clear that what was found in 2 samples taken from him were minuscule amounts.
0.000000005.
That was then. This was Thursday at the press conference. A media frenzy. Later, at the opening ceremony, the people spoke.
Alberto Contador!
So let's break down the curious case of the bad beef. In late July of last year, Alberto Contador wins his third career Tour de France, as we mentioned, just by 39 seconds. Then about a month later, informed of that positive test for trace amounts of clenbuterol. You heard him mention the 0000005, which is also Bob's phone number. In November, late November, submits defense to Spanish Federation, but receives a 1-year suspension 2 months later. Then in February, after appeal, cleared of all wrongdoing. And then in March, UCI appeals to the Court of Arbitration for Sports. Of course, the big number there, August 1st, the big date to watch. That is when the hearing will begin. It seems confusing, convoluted. The system has allowed this to linger. Does the system need to be revamped?
Well, that's the main problem with the system. The appeals process is way too long. We were supposed to have an answer before this year's tour started. However, we didn't have that. It's never happened that we didn't know the previous winner of the Tour de France before the next tour started. Alberto Contador is in a very special situation. There's no rule to prevent him from racing, so he's free to race. But if they find against him in August, he could lose last year's Tour, the Giro d'Italia that he won in the meantime, and this year's Tour de France if he does go ahead and win that. No rider in the history of cycling has ever lost 3 Grand Tours in one day.
So the system clearly is slow. It may be flawed, but that is not Alberto Contador's fault. Yet on Thursday at team introductions, he was booed. Are the fans right to boo this guy?
Well, boo or not, I'm not sure. Maybe you give the guy the benefit of the doubt until we get to the mountains, but that's going to be a huge problem for Contador. If the crowd turns against him in the mountains and he's constantly booed on every climb he does, it'll be almost impossible to continue and maintain the concentration required to win the hardest bike race in the world, the Tour de France.
Right or wrong, guilty or innocent, the fans nonetheless did boo Alberto Contador. Coming up, 2 men who never receive anything but enormous amounts of applause. Phil Liggett and Paul Sherwin will help us break down stage 1 and give us their predictions.
Presented by.
I want to wear the yellow jersey, yeah. Absolutely. It's the most significant symbol in cycling. And to be able to just pull that on once would be a massive thing.
My dream goal would be to win stage 1. So win one stage and with yellow jersey.
Tor Hushovd, Mark Cavendish, certainly 2 men to watch in stage 1. 2 men always worth watching. Phil Liggett and Paul Sherwin.
We're going to like him, huh?
I think we will. I think we will. And if I'm not mistaken, congrats, this is your 39th Tour de France.
Yes, apparently, yes.
Yes. One for... You are 39, though, so 1 for every year.
Correct.
Yes,
yeah.
Of course. Since it is your 39th Tour de France, why don't you guide us through stage 1 as we fire up the Michelin map and tell the people the ins and outs of the first stage of the 2011 Tour de France.
Well, over history, it's only about the 3rd or 4th time since I started covering the Tour in 70 that we've actually started over this side of France, right in the west in the Vendée. A lovely area where you'll get 3 million tourists coming here in the next few months to enjoy the beautiful beaches. But this race starts on the Passage de Gois, and it makes its way low undulations all the way down by the side of the ocean there as we eventually go to halfway point where there's a big sprint there. It'll be almost like a stage finish, a point in the green jersey, then onwards to the finish itself, which has this nasty little hill at the end called Skylark Hill, Paul.
Well, if you want it in French, it's actually the Mont des Alouettes. But let's have a quick look at the stage facts because they are rather interesting here this afternoon. The stage facts, as you can see, stage 1 from the Passage du Gois all the way to the Mont des Alouettes. It's about 119 miles, which is almost the same length as Long Island, which is just off New York. First start in Passage du Gois and, of course, the first finish in the Mont des Alouettes.
Passage du Gois, the start of 2011's Tour de France, but in 1999 it featured prominently for all the wrong reasons.
Big pile-up chaos on that stage. Lance Armstrong came out of it unscathed and went on to win his first Tour, the first of 7.
Paul, as someone who grew up on Long Island, I appreciate the correct pronunciation of Long Island. All right. Let's stop wasting time. Let's get to the moment of great significance, the Cadillac Performance predictions. Phil, you asked for the rules to be changed, and when you're Phil Liggett and you ask for something, it happens 1 year later. Let's take a look at the rules. 1 pick per player each day. No 2 picks can be the same. Order of picks alternates. Points breakdown, stage winner, 4, and then 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 3, 2, and 1. And, of course, the big thing at the bottom, this is what they are all playing for, the yellow jersey.
That's
It'll be awarded at the end. It may be. You look very good in light blue.
Thank you.
That's a good color. We'll see if you look good in yellow, perhaps, if you get the pick right. You, sir, are up first picking. So, to steal a line from your lane.
Why am I up first picking?
The 39th year, perhaps defending champion.
Yes.
Oh, that's right.
And so you're holding my jersey.
I am. So
okay.
To steal a line from your land, who do you fancy?
Well, It's going to be a difficult stage. I don't think it'll be a pure sprint. It'll be a man that's pretty tough on the mountains in small finishes like this. And one man who's been exceedingly good all year with over a dozen wins on such finishes like today is the new Belgium champion now, Philippe Gilbert. And might I add, with a name like Philippe, how can he possibly lose?
I like it. Phil going very scientific for pick one
Thank
of
you.
the
Well,
Tour
I'm not
de
very
France.
technical,
Phil
as you'll find out.
Philippe. So he picks Philippe. Can I assume you found someone on the roster named Bobke?
No Bobke's on the roster, so I had to go with the Hammer from Grinstad, the current world champion, and that is Tor Hushovd. Watch for the mighty Viking. It's not a flat, pure sprinter's course. A man with a little resistance, a little bit of extra power, Tor Hushovd. For 4 points for Bobke.
So Bob hoping that Tor will do better than the movie which bears his name did.
Yes.
Paul, finish us up. Why are these two guys wrong?
Well, because I'm the guy who always likes to hedge my bets a little bit, so I'm going for a tandem to win today. In fact, I'm going for a team high road at HTC. They'll be looking at two men at the front of the main pack. Today, I think Mark Cavendish will sacrifice himself for his Australian teammate, Matty Goss, who already this year has had some great success in Milano San Remo and a good start to the season. So watch out for Matty Goss.
So in the end, you did pick just one rider. Even though you went for the tandem, I felt like I wasted my time reading the rules. You just ignored them anyway. I'm not going to make a pick. I will abstain because, quite frankly, no one at home really cares who I picks. What I will do is jump on the bandwagon each and every day. And in day one, I'm jumping on Bobke's bandwagon. You
First mistake.
Tor Hushovd. Hey, rides for Garmin Cervelo. They have new kits. Argyle. And nothing intimidates like Argyle. So I'm going with Bobke. These two gentlemen have to hightail it back to the booth, but still to come, we will hear from one sprinter who will look to make a big splash in stage one. Welcome back to the Vendée region in the western part of France, site of stage one of the Tour. This is your Cadillac Pre-Race Show. Lee McHugh, Bob Roll. You know, we talked about Alberto Contador and Andy Schleck, the rivalry between them, and earlier you alluded to a team switch, and this team switch is only amping up the intensity of this rivalry.
Well, it's very strange that Andy Schleck's former team, he had been with Bjarne Riis and Saxo Bank throughout his professional career. He left to form his own team, Leopard Trek, with his brother Frank and a number of big stars from the Saxo Bank squad. You'd think that would be absolutely devastating to his previous squad, Saxo Bank, but Bjarne Riis had a trick up his sleeve. He had signed Alberto Contador in the offseason, the best stage racer in the world, but now that intensifies their rivalry. It'll be very interesting to see how it plays out.
So with Schleck starting his own team and twice being the bridesmaid, never the bride, how much pressure is on him?
Oh, absolutely. Huge pressure on Andy Schleck now. You don't just leave a team, leave them high and dry without some very special motivation. It seemed like they had the perfect marriage throughout Andy Schleck's trajectory to the top of the sport, but maybe that wasn't the case, so he went ahead and formed his own team, but the pressure will be just that much more intense because of that.
Of course, if Andy Schleck does finish second in this event to Alberto Contador, he'll be eyeing that August 1st court date, because if it does not go Contador's way, who knows, all of a sudden 2 second-place finishes could turn into 2 Tour de France victories. So Schleck and Contador, we expect them certainly to duke it out. Craig Hummer caught up with a man who's looking to take advantage of that situation.
Nerves are always noticeable on the first day of the Tour de France. Everyone expects the pressure on the shoulders of Alberto Contador and Andy Schleck. But when I spoke to Brian Nygaard, the team manager for Team Leopard Trek, he told me the exact opposite. He feels Andy has gone through an incredible maturation process over the past couple years, and he feels no one in the peloton is better at handling pressure than Andy Schleck himself. Well, on the flip side of the coin is American Chris Horner from Team Radio Shack. I spoke to him just moments ago. He was grinning from ear to ear. One of the reasons why, the fact that for the first time in many years, he has a chance to ride for himself at the Tour de France. And with a grin on his face, he told me the sky's the limit.
So Chris Horner, he'll be 40 in October. That makes him the second oldest rider in the Tour. Legit threat?
Oh, absolutely. Like fine wine, Chris Horner is improving with age. He just won the Amgen Tour of California. He gets one a very unique opportunity that not very many cyclists gets, the chance to lead a team in the Tour de France. I think he's going to have a great 3 weeks here in July.
Of course, today is stage one of the 2011 Tour de France. Robbie Ventura caught up with a man who may be the favorite and who Bobke certainly likes to take down stage one.
Tour, wearing the rainbow jersey here at the Tour de France. What does that mean to you, and what are your goals here at the Tour?
The goals here, it's try to win the stage, and of course I would like to show that nice jersey to the public and just get a nice victory.
It's been a transition for you, having another sprinter on the team and having a different role. What has that transition been like for you, and how is that going to affect the Tour de France?
I mean, the big difference is that I'm not going for green jersey, but now I can more focus on the real stages I think I can win, and so with a harder final. So I think in the end will not change too much.
Speaking of the green jersey, since you're not going to be going for it, will you be helping Tyler in that midway sprint today?
No, not today. He have Julian Dean as a lead-up man who will do this job.
And how about the finish today? How's it set up for you? It seems perfect.
Yeah, it's a hard finish, but I think me on a good day, I will be up there.
Good luck, Tor.
Thank you.
There's so much at stake here, not just a stage win. But you picked him. You could get your own yellow jersey here. Does he seem like a confident individual?
He seems very calm and confident. Good things. Also some very cagey responses by Tor Hushovd. He never gives anything away. When he says he's not going for the green jersey, I wouldn't believe that too strongly. He is the reigning world champion. He has not had a great season so far, but he did win a Tour Switzerland stage just a few days ago. So I think he's built his form to just the absolute perfect moment here at the right time, the Tour de France.
So one thing I love about covering cycling is that a man who stands about 5'11", Tor Hushovd, can be referred to as the giant Norwegian. But if it isn't him, perhaps it could be a good day for the American Tyler Farrar.
Oh, Tyler Farrar, also an incredible turn of speed. It's not a pure sprinter's course. And Tyler Farrar does have a little bit more resistance than the pure fast men in the race. Tyler Farrar and Tor Hushovd, the dynamic sprinting duo for Garmin Cervelo, the American team here at the Tour, one of 4 American teams.
So the stage is set, but we would like you to experience the Tour in a complete new way. Experience it like never before. Go to NBCSports.com/cycling and get your Tour de France All Access. Watch every stage live online, in your tablet or on your phone. Available now on NBCSports.com/cycling. Get Tour de France All Access for just $29.95. Up next, Phil and Paul will have the live call. Stage 1 of the 2011 Tour de France.
It has traditionally begun in orderly fashion. One cyclist at a time setting out from the gate to ride alone for the best time. But at the outset this year, methodical tradition gives way to orchestrated chaos at the Tour de France. There's a crash there. It was a very, very sharp turn. There's been another massive pile-up behind. Here's another crash in the middle. Once owned by time trial specialists, this opening stanza is now any cyclist's domain. The galvanizing force of the wide-open road. And, of course, instantly crowded with uncertainty. This sprint machine devours flat ground, but a late climb could prove to be a brick wall. If the missile's momentum fades, his formidable teammate could rise. For this American, each fresh stage is a potential chance for an eagerly awaited Tour breakthrough. Elsewhere, the possibility lurks for thunder. The reigning world champion actively hunting for an early lead. And with opportunity omnipresent, these contenders prepare to launch their rivalry yet again. In this opening chapter, mayhem begins on page 1. And for at least a day, every face in the field has a chance to seize glory at the Tour de France. We first spoke about this magical road which goes out to an island in the year 857. Yes, the 1st century, but we didn't call it the Passage du Gois until about the 16th century. But today it marks the start of the Tour de France, and we are in the most beautiful region of the Vendée, which has 90 miles of beach and 140 miles of water down the Atlantic seaboard. This is the place to be today on the 2nd of July. Hi everybody, welcome now to the commentary box. I'm Phil Liggett, this is Paul Sherrin. I don't know about you, Paul, but I'm ready this year.
I'm absolutely ready because I think we're going to set up for a fantastic first day of racing. After all, it's a road stage, it's not a prologue. The first man to cross the line is going to be the yellow jersey.
That's absolutely right, there's no bonuses, and there are 2 teams up for the fight today. HTC Columbia, they've got 2 riders. We always talk of Mark Cavendish, the sprinter, but Paul, what about Matty Goss in his first tour?
Well, this is an amazing thing to have a team like that that's got a replacement sprinter. They're 2 different kinds of sprinters. Mark Cavendish, very flat, very fast on the flat finishes, but Matty Goss is able to get over the hills, and that's why in my book today I have a funny feeling that HTC High Road may turn it around for their man Matty Goss. But watch out, because, you know, on Garmin Cervelo, they're also very fortunate, Phil, because they've got 2 different kinds of sprinters. Tyler Farrar, the American rider, looking for his first Tour de France stage victory. If he can't get himself over the hill, then watch out for the man that we always call the big god of thunder, Thor Hushovd.
Now, we've always alluded in the show so far about the change in the point score now for the green jersey, which is basically introduced in 1953 for the sprinter. Well, now they've made it, I think, much more exciting. The halfway point of every stage, Paul, they're going to race like it's the end of the day for the points for the green jersey.
I think it's going to be very important. I think it's actually a very good change for the sprinters. Now, let's have a look at how it's going to work out on the course. On the flat stages, you get yourself 45 points if you're the first rider to cross the line. 30 points for a medium mountain stage, 20 points for the high mountain stages, and the same for the time trial. But out on the course, there's only 1 intermediate sprint point instead of 3 last year, and the first man across the line there, Phil, will get himself 20 points.
So that's how it all works. Let's have a look how it started earlier today, because the race has been on the road now for approximately 2 hours. This was the neutralised rollout from Fromentine, which was the start town here in the Vendée. And all of the riders in their brand new strips, many of the teams changing their colours, but especially for the Tour de France, including Garmin Cervelo, Team Sky. There's Cadel Evans, the pressure of Australia. There's only 6 Australians in the race, but Cadel Evans is one man hoping to finally win it for Australia. And Mark Cavendish, who is all smiles. He thinks there might be 4 or 5 stages he can win.
Well, he certainly does, but one man had a very unlucky start to the race. In fact, he crashed just 15 minutes into the race before the race had actually started. Andre Greipel, a man who is an outsider to win the stage today, and it was all right at the back end of the main field. A little bit embarrassing, I would have to say.
Yes, Andre Greipel, always kept out of the Tour by Mark Cavendish. He was on the same team, but now he's changed teams. He's got his chance in the Tour de France. He's a first-timer, and he's also the first faller. Now, this is the Passage du Gois. Actually, for twice a day, the tide comes and goes, and this is totally underwater. You can only trace it by the little spikes like snow markers across the estuary. You certainly cannot drive over it on those occasions. But they've timed it right, and the crowd are there, and there's no sign of the sea. So this was the big star, Christian Prudhomme in the purple shirt there, the director of the Tour de France. So we are underway. We've just gone over the Passage du Gois. And can you believe this? I think we can. It's the Tour de France, Paul. A breakaway forming immediately of 3 riders.
And everybody wants to get out on the course as quickly as possible, especially when it is the Tour de France. The first 3 riders, Jérémy Roy of France, Perica Kermener from France as well, and Louis Wiestre of the Netherlands getting into an early breakaway and setting up a fairly smart advantage.
Meanwhile, another crash, and involved in this one was Anthony Charteau, who was the king of the mountains in this event last year. Deja vu, I'm afraid, because in this year's Tour of South Africa, he crashed on the first day of that race too and broke his collarbone. And there's another one gone down from Amiga Farmer Lotto. Spectator getting the best view there. This is amazing, but this is a nervous part to the Tour de France.
The first stage is always nervous, Phil, when it's a road stage, and because everybody knows at the end of today, if you can get your line across the wheel across the line in first place, you will be the first leader. I'm not really sure how this happened at all, because you can see all the arms going up there. These guys were trying to warn the riders behind. There was a metal object in the middle of the road. All of a sudden, the Omega Pharma Lotto rider on the right-hand side went down extremely hard.
Just And that's TJ Van Garderen, also the American there in his first tour. Let's have a look at the weather, and it's a beautiful day. 74 degrees Fahrenheit, slight winds, but they are winds which could trouble the riders today, and the forecast is sunny throughout the day. A perfect day for the start of the 98th Tour de France. And of course, all of our pictures from the Tour de France are available in high definition. I suggest you that's what you get, because the pictures are stunning as we make our journey over the next 3 weeks. And the number of riders on the start line, 198. Usually about 30% won't make it to Paris. 22 of the best teams in the world have made the split for the Tour de France. We're going to follow these guys, Paul, with on the pulse.
Well, it gives us an idea of just how hard the race is. Thomas Vaitkus, Christian Knies of Germany, Martin Bouffaz of France, and René Zingel of Belgium. We'll get out onto the course occasionally to see what their heart rate is doing, and that will give us an indication of just how difficult it is. Well, this is the Omega Pharma Lotto rider who went down just a little bit ago, Jürgen van der Walle, and he's being paced back into the main field by his teammate there just in front of him.
Yes, we'll see a lot of teamwork helping each other survive the long 3-week race to Paris. Jürgen van der Walle, number 37 there. And just coming up behind him is Santa Romita, an Italian on the American BMC racing team who's riding in his first Tour de France. They're all learning the tough way today, aren't they? 2 first-timers are in that 3-man breakaway. Louis Westra from the Vacances Soleil team and Pierre Kemeneur of the Europe car.
Well, just looking down here, Phil, as we go out towards the Chateau de Grange-Catou. This was actually first constructed in the 10th century. Since after that, it was destroyed and built back up again in the 14th century after his return from the wars of Italy by Jean Catou.
Well, I must say they've done a jolly good job down there rebuilding that. You see in the time gap at around about 4 minutes 44 seconds. They went at the 0 kilometre of the day in the first few hundred yards of the race. Jeremy Roy, well, he's 27 years of age, Jeremy Roy right now. He won the first race in Europe this year, the Grand Prix Marseillais in France. And he's only ever won 3 races, but he's a name we often speak about in front of the cameras.
Well, the French would always be looking for an early breakaway here at the Tour de France, especially on day one, as there are no time bonuses, and of course there has been no prologue time trial. Fabien Cancellara, the man who over the last couple of years has been the dominant rider in the opening prologue at the Tour de France, actually says, Phil, that he's enjoyed his rather relaxed lead up to the Tour.
Well, let's see if it produces results as we unfold. The other man in the breakaway, Leo Vester, his first tour for him. He's nearly 29 years of age now. He's had a few wins, but he's never ridden the Tour de France. I was quite surprised at that, Paul. I thought I'd seen him in this race before, but big moment for him as well.
It certainly is. That 3-man breakaway group were allowed to form an advantage of almost 7 minutes, and then the main field decided that's starting to get just a little bit too far off. So 1 or 2 teams went to the front, started to set the pace, making they've brought it back down now to a fairly sensible 4.5 minutes or so, and that is, I think, fairly comfortable for the riders in the main field. But I do think in a couple of kilometres time we'll see a very serious sprint for the first and only sprint point out on the course. An innovation in the Tour de France this year. Instead of having 3 points out on the course where the riders could get points, they've only got 1.
Well, as the riders come back together, let's just check in. We've got a nice surprise for you today, because in the bottom right of our picture we've got a car cam in there today. That's the car of Garmin Cervelo, and Jonathan Vaughters is on the left of our picture. He's the man behind the team, and we're going to try and hear during our coverage exactly what they're saying. He's alongside the team manager there, Hernandez. Routine day at the moment, a break of 3, a nice little gap, still 75 miles to go. At Avrillé we'll have the first sprint for those green jersey points, and we'll see how the big sprinters tackle that, which will include Garmin Cervelo's Tyler Farah. We'll take our first break. Stay with us on the route to Tour de France.
The 2011 Tour de France on Versus is brought to you by Specialized and by Clean Bottle, the bottle that unscrews at both ends for easy cleaning. Get yours at REI, Performance Bikes, or at cleanbottle.com. Clean Bottle. Ride clean.
Wouldn't it be cool if you took the top down on a cross?
At 2 p.m. Eastern, the Tour de France continues on NBC with additional coverage of today's first stage. And in its additional coverage too of the Tour de France and Stage 1 later today at 2 p.m. Eastern, also on NBC. Well, the Tour de France is now underway as we course over the beautiful department of the Vendée, making its opening stage today of 119 miles. There's the diamond shape of the peloton down there. They're pursuing these three riders. 4:24 is the current time gap. Well, as we look at the peloton now of the Tour de France, I think the rest of the world has joined us now, Paul. We've seen one or two crashes today, but basically this has been an excellent beginning for the Tour de France. Under blue skies, massive crowds at the start of the Passage du Gois. There's a massive crowd at the finish, and it is a difficult hilltop finish as well. The peloton getting to know themselves now, because these are their bedmates for the next 3 weeks here, like them or not. And the three riders who got away, Alouettes of Vacances, Pierre Cameneur of the Europe car team, and Jeremy Roy of the Française des Jeux team, they jumped away as soon as the flag was pulled in, and they've been away ever since. So they've been away now for about 2¼ hours.
Yes, they have. They've dominated the first part of this race. Interesting to note that it's Omega Pharma Lotto have put a man to the front end of the main field, and I think your big pre-race favourite is going to have a lot of responsibility on his shoulders. The newly crowned champion of Belgium, and there he is, almost on cue. And of course, Philippe Gilbert.
Gilbert is having one of those seasons that professionals can only dream about. His 13th win of the year was the weekend before we started here. Last Sunday he won the Belgian Championship title, but he's won so many major races this year, but he's never had a good Tour de France, and he's about to put that to rights, I think. And he's a good man to pick for the day's finish, Paul, because nearly all his wins this season have been on finish lines similar to where we are.
Well, he's got incredible form, and it's a very steep climb. I'm not sure whether it's steep enough for him. A quick look here at Frank Schleck, and he's, in fact, Andy Schleck, sorry. And he's looking.
I'm glad you got mixed up, because I live with it all my life.
No, the Schleck brothers, I think, are going to be a formidable duo in this Tour de France. And as long as Frank Schleck doesn't crash out as he did last year on the very early stages of the Tour de France, I think those two together are going to be a real thorn in the side for Alberto Contador.
So we have the beauty from the helicopter of the Tour de France bunch. Well, as we look down the peloton, you know, we expect HTC, the most successful team on the block, to do something. And this morning we chose HTC High Road, an American team out of California, and we listened in to their team talk earlier this morning.
Okay, gentlemen, today there's going to be a lot of attacking from the start. We're going to jump in bigger groups, more than 10 riders. We have to be there. We're not going to take the responsibility today. We're going to ride. If somebody ride with us, otherwise we'll let it go. Anyway, it's a big chance it's coming down to a bunch sprint. Then Gois. As for you, Cav, you're gonna have a good shot also. So Bernie, you bring them up there on the last roundabout.
He's nice to me.
So, and when the break is gone, then Danny, you look after Tony. Eisel, look after Cav. And Bach, you look after Gois. You're new in the team.
Who's that guy?
And we're gonna have some information about the wind, about the roads on the stage. So we're gonna have that later during the race. Okay? So, I wish you very good luck today.
Viva.
Vive la France.
Allez les Bleus.
That was Mark Cavendish to the right there as we listened in there to HTC High Road's team tactics of the day. Now, surprisingly, they seem to be indicating that they're putting all the power of the team behind Mark Cavendish, even though there is this 2-kilometre climb up to the finish. And I thought they might have wanted to stay with Matthew Goss. That was Brian Holm giving the talk, by the way, who's ridden 7 tours himself. So just looking here at the workload of the 3 leaders, Paul, it looks as though the experienced hand, the man who's ridden the Tour before, Ra, of 43%. But, you know, thinking back to the finishing line for HTC Columbia, they seem to be more intent, HTC High Road, that was the role name, wasn't it? They seem to be more intent on trying to put all their eggs into the Cavendish basket today.
Well, all of the riders on the team really do believe that Cavendish can get himself up this climb here this afternoon. And, you know, Cavendish is one of those riders. Let's not forget, Phil, that he actually previously has won Milan-San Remo, and to win that, you've got to get over the famed climb of the Poggio, and that is what is important. And if Cavendish wants to win this race, if he wants to get the yellow jersey on the first day, I think he's very capable of suffering like a dog.
Well, it would certainly be a great result for the Isle of Man, who has produced Mark Cavendish, and to win 15 stages so far. He's looking to win 4 or 5 again this time around. Wouldn't that be a wonderful start for him? So as we look across the beauty of the Vendée, let me remind you, make sure you are playing the IZOD race for the podium sweepstakes. Log on to NBCsports.com/podium every day during the tour for your chance to win a trip for 2 to next year's Tour de France and a Cervelo S5 bike. I've ridden one, they're brilliant. You can also win a clean bottle and a Giro helmet, and today's code word you require is breakaway. So that's something to look forward to over the next 3 weeks. Well, we're continue to look at the chateau. This is the chateau of Grange-Catus. As we pan around the Vendée countryside, we'll see plenty of these beautiful chateaux between now and Paris. I just hope I know what we're looking for. The Tour de France is on. The crashes have started. We're underway. We'll see you in a moment. Well, before we talk about yellow, that comes at the end of the day, let's talk about the green jersey now. We've got 3 riders out in front, but the new rules for the green jersey competition, we're heading to that S, which is the sprint point for the day, and it carries big points this time around. There's not 3 or 4 of them, just 1. So we can expect a lot of riders here going for the valuable points, probably Cavendish, Farah, etc. So as we pan around here, the beautiful chateau of Talmont, we're getting ever closer now to that sprint point, Paul. It comes at 87 miles from the finish, or 187 kilometres rather, 104 kilometres into the race. And so we're going to see then a battle royale, I think, as the riders go for that sprint, even though the sprinters on this occasion are only going to be sprinting for 4th place.
It doesn't matter. It's all about points. It's all about making sure you get points on every individual stage if you want to win the green jersey. And don't forget that Thor Hushovd, although a sprinter, actually won his points competition on a breakaway in the mountains.
Well, these 3 boys got away at 0 kilometres. They've still got quite a measured time gap of inside 4 minutes now. They were out to a maximum of nearly 7. And they won't be wiped out before that sprint point at the town of Avrillé. So they'll get the maximum 20 points. The one will who wins the sprint anyway. And the 3 of them will get the high points. But the sprinters are locked together back in that field, and they'll take each other on. It's also a dress rehearsal, isn't it, Paul? The sprinters will want to know who's going well today.
It'll be a first indication of how serious they're going to take this new rule change, and I think we will see almost, as you say, Phil, a dress rehearsal for the finish. We'll see the big lead-out trains coming to the front end of the main field, and it might give us an inkling into just exactly how Team HTC High Road are going to try and lead out Mark Cavendish, because when we talked to them just the other day, they didn't reveal which way round they were going to line themselves up for the lead-out train.
I have to say, I wouldn't like to play poker with Mark Cavendish, because I never know what the guy is thinking, even when I interview him. His mind does not give anything away. He considers all of his replies. And even in the team meeting this morning inside the team bus, he was sat near the front of the bus. He didn't even appear to be listening to the briefing, but he clearly was. And he must be thinking, all the pressure's on me, especially on a day like this. About 3.5 miles or 5 or 6 kilometres from the sprint point now at Avrillé. Now, in the previous years, we've had 3 or 4 of these sprints, but only for the first 3 riders to cross the line, first 4 riders to cross the line. Now, it's a race full on from the whole field, and it's the first 15 riders who will get points. So, and there's no other sprint point all day except at the finishing line. So we're going to see some real good sprinting from the peloton. Work being done here by Jérémy Roy of the Française des Jeux, and flies the flag for a French team. And Talmont are saying how much they love the velo. Well, I think everybody in the Vendée just loves the velo here, because it's a great place to ride, whether you're a racing cyclist or just a fun cyclist. This is the place to come, and after you've done it all, there's a massive seafood around here. You can go on the beach and do your own cockling and catch your own whelks. I don't know what whelks are in French, Paul, you might.
Well, you can see the banner there, Phil. That's an indicator that's 5 kilometres to go to finish, 3 miles. This is going to be a mad dash for the line because, as you said, it's the opening day. Everybody's extremely nervous. We will see, I think, almost a picture postcard finish at the finishing spot point here at 87 kilometres, 55 miles into the race. They will take risks, I think, as they will take risks for the finishing sprint.
Well, we've got a first-timers sandwich here because the two boys around the man in white, it's their first Tour de France. This is the point of the sprint, 5,000 metres away. So it's 5 kilometres or 3 miles still to go. But you can see they're making a much bigger deal of this now. It's like a semi-stage finish of the Tour de France, and we're going to see this on a daily basis. Jeremy Roy in the middle in the white, he rode his first Tour de France back in 2008. He's got the great distinction of finishing all 3 tours he's ridden so far, and he's ridden every year since 2008 for the same team, Française des Jeux. The organisers make no apology for allowing the French teams into this race because they admit that they support French cycling, and I must say I cannot disagree with that. But of course all the major teams around the world are in here as well, including 4 teams from the United States. That is an indication, Paul, just how cycling in the States has grown, because not only that, but they have a record entry of riders which equals the days of Greg LeMond 21 years ago.
Well, one of those teams, of course, is HTC High Road, and you can see they are taking this intermediate sprint extremely seriously because they've come to the front. They've got Lars back there in first position. In third position, the captain, I would think, of the sprint, and that, of course, is Bernie Eisel, the man who will wait for the last possible moment. I think we're going to see a big mad dash for the line here, and yes, Mark Cavendish is going to take the intermediate sprint seriously, and, of course, the finish too.
Well, quite clearly, HTC High Road are going to give Cavendish the best possible start. Cavendish must have transmitted to the team. We've got to give it a go, guys, and see how it works out. Even though he keeps on playing down his hunt for the green jersey, it is significant. No British cyclist has ever won it, by the way. And Cavendish, really, if he hadn't had 1 or 2 problems on the way over the last couple of years with relegations, etc., he would have won it already. 3 minutes 45, the 3 numbers of the leaders on the top of that board, and they'll all be taking a close look at it. Another kilometre ticked off, 4 to go now to the sprint. And quite clearly, HTC, they're also using it, Paul, as a possible dress rehearsal for the finish, getting to know each other on another big stage of the Tour de France.
Yeah, that's very important, actually, Phil, because you've got to figure out which guy you want to follow, because some guys are very difficult to follow because they've got a very rapid acceleration. Some guys have got the acceleration like a big turbo diesel engine. It's slow, but once they get up to speed, they can hold that speed for 1 or 2 kilometres. So it's very important to have the right riders in the right position in the lead out. I would have to, well, it's obvious that if Mark Cavendish is going for it, the man who will be right in front of him is going to be Mark Renshaw. Probably in front of Renshaw will be Matty Goss, and the first man in front of all of those riders will be Bernie Eisel.
Yes, the strong man from Austria who smiles his way through the Tour because he knows that every day is simply a painful day for him as a helper for the team. But if they get their man over the line, be it Goss or Cavendish, it's all worth the pain. Here we are, the beautiful crowd here at the Vendée. The Tour de France remains as popular as ever here, especially on a day like today with clear blue skies and a good forecast ahead. Tomorrow, by the way, the team time trial was extremely popular, not very far away from where the riders are right now in Les Essarts, and it's not a very long team time trial either. So that will be a very interesting event, and we expect teams with ambition for final victory. They've got to do good times tomorrow and keep their men in the action. So Contador, Saxo Bank team, Bradley Wiggins, Sky team, High Road must do well, HTC High Road. They've all got to react tomorrow, and Garmin Cervelo as well.
So that's Avrillé where the sprint is. It's 3 kilometres, 1.8 miles. These 3 riders at the front, so they're not too concerned about getting themselves in the right position just now. It's in the main field where the peloton have got to get themselves organised. The safest sprint you can have is actually one that is led out from a long way and strings out the main field, because if it's a slow sprint and you don't get yourself stretched out into a long line before you get to the sprint, I have to say a lot of riders start to take risks, and that makes it a dangerous sprint.
Well, another rider we should watch out for. He's got the nod this year with the Sky team, Ben Swift. And it's a good name, isn't it? When you finish on Skylark Hill and you've got a name like Swift, you can't lose, can you, Paul?
Well, I would think he's probably feeling very confident about that this afternoon. Swifty getting his first participation in the Tour de France. Mark Cavendish is not too far away from the front end of the main field. You can see the line there on the right-hand side. That's HTC High Road, and at the back of that line will be Mark Cavendish. Just keeping an eye on his men and saying, accelerate, slow down, just keep us up here. Let's not get us swamped. But there are a lot of pink and blue jerseys moving to the front. That is Team Lampre, and that, of course, is the team of Alessandro Patacchi. And he's the kind of rider, Phil, who could get himself up to the top of this climb at the finish. But before that, we've got to go for this intermediate sprint.
Well, Alessandro Patacchi, a great sprinter, but I've known him retire when he's worn the green jersey in the Tour de France. This is his 5th tour, and he hasn't finished. He's finished 2, I think, throughout his career. 2 kilometres, less than 2 miles, about 1.7 miles to the finish now, just over 4 minutes, so it's gone out slightly. Now we've got it. Now we've got nearest camera here the Lampre team from Italy looking to lead out Alessandro Patacchi. On the left-hand side is the white, yellow, black jerseys of Mark Cavendish. They're looking to lead him, and others are butting in. Andre Greipel's Oma Pharma Lotto team are coming in.
Well, it's quite interesting here because on the left-hand side you've got HTC High Road in a very good, perfect line. On the other side of the road you've got Team Lampre, and starting to get themselves organised in the middle, the men in Argyle, a team Garmin Savella, and I wonder who their man is going to be for the sprint on the Platte. I would bet it will be Tyler Foran.
Well, obviously so, and I can see the slightly changed colours of Sky now. They've got a green central large band. That's because they're supporting the loss of rainforest here, and they're fighting to protect the environment, so they've changed to green this year. And I must say I support them in that, and they're looking to try and give Ben Swift a perfect start as well. You've got to give it your best on day one because you do not know how life will change as this tour unfolds, so you've got to get in amongst it. These 3 boys, I suggest, are well out of it because they wouldn't be in the sprint.
No, they wouldn't at all. But the interesting thing is today, Phil, 198 riders in the Tour de France will believe that they've got a crack at getting the yellow jersey, and that's not always the case.
Well, this is the last kilometre to the sprint, and the first time I've ever seen it is a kite in the sky. It's a green one to mark the last kilometre. The last kilometre of the race is red, and that's because this now in the Tour de France is the only sprint of the day, but it carries a lot of points, and it is ultimately important for anybody with the sprinter's ambition. A very, very good innovation, I think.
Well, I think if it's a green sign for the 1 kilometre to go, maybe the guy in the green jersey, Peric Kemener, is going to get himself the victory here, because then it would be a full set.
Well, he's never won a pro race. He's a new young pro. He's been a pro, what, 3 or 4 years now. But this man here from Europcar has got the pressure of the company just down the road. So we're now looking at about coming up to 500 metres to the sprint here for the 3 leaders. I think they will sprint it out. And normally at this stage of the race we'd see them ride through, but there's big points now for green jersey. And as going through now, it's Vestre from Vacances Soleil, followed by Kemener, who I feel like Paul here. He'd be my bet to win, but we'll see, because now Leo Vestre is going to open up the sprint. Looking to see who's going to come. Kemener has never won a bike race, but he's French, and that makes a difference. Being stalked by Jeremy Roy, another Frenchman, and it's Roy who goes. Good name, that. The king has just taken off, and it looks as though he's going to get the first points of this newly scoring competition for the green jersey. He gets 20 points for the win. It's a terrific result. It's as many as you would get if you won the time trial on the penultimate day of this Tour de France. So it is Roy getting it, and Vestre second, and we must stop picking people forward because our man just finished there.
That was very unfortunate. Maybe I gave him the kiss of death there. Well, those riders will pick up 20, 17 and 15 points. Now, the first rider to cross the line from the main field will get himself a good chunk of 13 points, down to just a single point for the 15th rider across the line.
And that is going to be a sprint royale, because those points could decide the green jersey in Paris. They finished that close in the past. In fact, I remember the Aussie Stuart O'Grady losing the green jersey in Paris on the last sprint of the day to the German cyclist Eric Zabel, who, by the way, is now training Mark Cavendish.
Well, the main field are certainly starting to queue up because they're the ones now who are going to sprint across the line, only looking for 4th place. But as you mentioned, Phil, the green jersey can be won and lost by a single point after 3 weeks of racing, and nobody wants to do that. I think obviously you can see left-hand side, Alessandro Patacchi's team. This is almost like a drag strip. A rider swinging off there. I think that will be Lars back. Don't be surprised to see Tom Bonen too far away from Team Quick Step.
As you look down, Paul, we've got 2 teams definitely trying to get control, but the right-hand bend has pushed both trains together here onto the far right of the road, and it's advantage Patacchi just now with the Omega Pharma Lotto boys trying to get in, and Philippe Gilbert, the blacktop champion of Belgium, also willing to work here for Andre Greipel.
Greipel's in 4th position in that line of Omega Pharma Lotto. Big acceleration now, little moving up to the front there. The champion of Holland is making himself aware at the front end of the main field. This is going to be for Patacchi, and all of a sudden HTC High Road seem to have got themselves swamped.
Well, 35 and going up in miles per hour now. Everybody checking out where their sprinters are, and it could well be Greipel has got himself in the best place here as they open up the sprint for the line now. Patacchi is the 3rd wheel of the centre line as he tries to make a run, but we're coming. In fact, Gilbert is washed away. 1 or 2 bumps there has pushed the Cavendish into a disadvantage here. You would never see a sprint like this normally for 4th place in the green jersey, but now they're rewinding it up here as they start to go for the line. We've still got Cavendish in the hunt.
Cavendish there in 2nd position. Looks like Tom Bonen on his wheel there in 3rd position in the blue and white there. That is the shape of Bonen in 3rd position. Over on the left-hand side, you can see Garmin Savella trying to get themselves wound up, but here comes the big move on the right.
Well, Cavendish is looking at them. He's playing with them, but watch out because Farah's gone over the top, and Cavendish was not paying attention. And Tyler Farah and Andre Greipel go head-to-head, and Cavendish has said, that's enough for me. He had that one, Paul. He thought nobody was going to come and challenge him.
Well, he wasn't expecting the challenge to come so hard and fast out there on the road. Now, look at this. This is the American rider in the middle in the blue helmet, Tyler Farah, just getting the better there of Greipel, who looks over his shoulder as if to say, so where are you, Mr. Cavendish?
Well, what that's done now is Farah gets up in the finish when we come down to the line at Les Herbiers. He could be in the green jersey at least tonight, even if he doesn't win the stage, because that is a very valuable 13 green jersey points in the bank. Now look at this. Now Cavendish was almost going easy. Now he's making his traditional move, but not wanting to overuse his energy. But then when it all happens from Farah, he looks again and thinks, heck, I've made a mistake here, and he's totally swamped out of it.
Yeah, but what goes through a sprinter's mind, once you know you're beaten, you feel defeated, you just give up, and that's why all of a sudden Cavendish has said, well, forget about that. I'm not getting maximum points here this afternoon. I'll save it all for the finish line.
Well, that was a little bit of a surprise here. These are the Movistar team here, which is a new team on the block, and back on Soleil, who we're looking at the moment. Leopard Trek here. And Philippe Gilbert, few deep breaths, but job well done there by the American Tyler Farah. He's taken the points, and he does a lot more than just give you points. It gives you a great confidence boost as well. So Farah there will now slip steadily back into the bunch and try and remain anonymous now, if he can, until we get to the finishing climb. Just caught a glimpse there of the Australian there, Stuart O'Grady, who's riding his 15th Tour de France today. That puts him right up amongst the leaders. We haven't seen George Hincapper yet, but he started okay, and he's riding his 16th Tour, which equals the record of the great Dutch cyclist Joop Zoetemelk of Holland. There's the sprint, and the Americans are scoring already. So well done, Tyler Farah. We're going to take a break. He made it look easy, didn't he? Rejoin us on the Route to Tour in just a few moments. We're looking here at Alexander Vinokourov in the Tour de France. So we've done about 70 miles of today's stage, and we've already seen American cyclists in the thick of the action at Avrillé. We've still got the 3 riders up in the lead. We're back in the convoy behind the pack here, because after that sprint at Avrillé, the riders are taking time out to go and visit the team cars and take on drinks. It's quite a warm day today now. It's gone over 74 degrees Fahrenheit, in fact. There is quite a wind blowing, and it'll be on their faces when they come up to the finishing climb on the Mont les Alouettes, or the Skylark Hill, as it would be called in English. These are the 3 leaders here: Wester, Jeremy Roy, and Kemeneur. who shared the points. And the order over the line was Raw, Westra, Kavanagh in that order, and then chased over the line by Tyler Farrar of America. Got the best of the sprinters, and that's got to be a great morale booster for him. So let's have a look if we can show you that great sprint again. Here we go. And there it is now. Farrar being challenged there by Andre Greipel, while bumping and barging in the backwards direction was Mark Cavendish, who got that one a bit wrong. But Tyler Farrar in the blue helmet, the American boy, has really delivered today. 13 variable points. All right. Well, as we take a look at the USA Cycling Americans in the 2011 Tour de France, 25 years. Boy, these Americans have come a long way. Paul Sherwin's going to tell us more.
We're cavemen, what can I say? We're bad to the bone.
In 1986, 7-Eleven became the first American team to ride in the Tour de France, and Greg LeMond became the first American to win it. In the 25 years since, Americans have played a vital role in shaping the sport, from the transcendent moments.
Donald Fignon has lost the Tour, and Greg LeMond has won it.
To race-changing technology, including the aero handlebars of LeMond and the revolutionary skin suits of Armstrong, changing the way professional cyclists race and prepare to race in the world's biggest events. Now in 2011, for the second straight year, 4 American teams will line up at the Tour de France, as a new generation looks to build on its own legacy, using the wisdom learned from its forefathers.
No, without a doubt, I think American cycling's the healthiest it's ever been. There's always been one American team. When I started following cycling, it was Motorola, and there was kind of this underdog team. Not only are there 4 American teams, but they're 4 of the strongest teams out there. It's just amazing to see the progression that's happened within American cycling, the level of interest and the amount of young riders who are getting into the sport.
It'd be great to have a young American come win the Tour again. And once you have the athletes that people can follow, people can be fans of, can really buy into their stories and follow their every move, that's what makes sports.
At the Tour de France this year, Lance Armstrong's former Team Radio Shack boasts veterans Levi Leipheimer and Chris Horner, both showing their best form in years. Former 7-Eleven boss Jim Okovits has returned to his roots, running the BMC racing team, where veteran George Hincapie assists him in grooming youngsters like Brent Bookwalter, hailing from Athens, Georgia, and now racing in his second Tour, plus Americans' next big hope, Taylor Phinney, the son of former Tour great Davis Phinney. He's expected to make his Tour debut in 2012. In a few short years, former professional cyclist Jonathan Vaughters has transformed the Continental team's slipstream into Garmin Cervelo, one of the most respected teams in the sport. And don't forget Bob Stapleton, once just a fan, he's built HTC High Road from the ashes of the old German Team Telecom, winning an amazing 16 stages at the Tour de France in the past 3 years. His team now boasting 22-year-old Montana native TJ Van Garderen, making his Tour debut this year. In total, 10 Americans will compete in the Tour de France in 2011, their talent representing a bold reminder that this cycling nation, once viewed as naive, has made some bold competitive strides since the caveman days.
Those caveman days. Well, let's take a look at the USA Cycling Americans in this year's Tour de France. We've got 10 of them here. Tommy D gets his first ride. Tyler Farrar, we've just seen in action. A colourful history. He's seen 2 of his very close friends, including his father, injured in cycling, and of course his best friend, Wouter Valens, dying in the Giro d'Italia this year. And Christian van der Velde, he's had his ups and downs literally, but he's had a 4th too in the Tour de France. Dave Zabriskie, he's worn a yellow jersey in the Tour. Chris Horner, well, I believe that man can get his hands on yellow this year. Levi Leipheimer, equally so. Bookwalter from Athens, another great bike rider. Hincapie's 38 now. He rides his 16th Tour de France. Danny Pate, I think it's his 4th Tour de France for Danny. And newcomer is TJ Van Garderen, who I give him 4 years, that guy will talk about as a possible winner. So as we look there at the peloton snaking its way as it continues now through the beauty of the Vendée region of France, we have gone through the sprint. The knife and fork there means we're approaching the feed, but it's not a sit-down one, it's grab your bag and keep going. So we've seen one American in action, Paul, today, Tyler Farrar. What's that going to do to Mark Cavendish? Because he made a real mess of that sprint.
I think he just got caught out. He was expecting to accelerate very quickly. He wasn't expecting that big break to come from Tyler Forrest on the left-hand side. I don't think he'll do anything. He'll get himself into a different concentration for the finishing line. But it is interesting to know that when I was racing, there were probably only 3 or 4 English-speaking riders in the international circuit. There was myself, Sean Kelly, the Irishman, and Jonathan Boyer, the American. Now you've got 10 Americans at the start of the Tour de France this year, and of course 4 American teams. And let's not forget one British team too, Team Sky.
Well, as I said earlier, George Hincapie riding the Tour for a record equaling time. He won't actually claim the #1 spot because Joop Zoetemelk, who's ridden 16 tours, finished every one. And George hasn't finished all 16, but he certainly started 16 now. So he will go in second place, but that's more than anybody else apart from Joop Zoetemelk has attempted in the Tour. These are the narrow roads of this beautiful little town at 95 kilometers still to ride to the finish. No chances taken in these narrow French towns. That's Philippe Gilbert, very proudly sporting his Belgian champion's jersey. Off on the right of our picture is the God of Thunder, Thor Hushovd, who dressed for the occasion at the team presentation at the Puy de Fou. So the world champion on the right, the champion of Belgium in the middle. They might go head-to-head when we get down to the finishing line today, or I should say, when we get up to the finishing line today at the Mont des Alouettes. We'll see in a moment. But you've got to believe this, but this is one of the last windmills in the world to operate solely off wind power with no assistance from motors at all. The Moulin à Vent Rare was built in 1555 and it's never stopped since. Can you believe that? It was modified in 1864, so they must have been lucky not to stop it, but it was modified in 1864 and added those adjustable wooden wings. And it's not been changed since. That is an incredible situation. Now, this is from the farmers of the Vendée here. And just look at this. They put all the straw bales out. They've bailed out the quads, and they're going round in circles. I just hope they've got enough gas to go by. This is from the farmers of the Vendée. So there's the main peloton, and it looks as though they're getting under the control again of Sprinter's teams here, because remember, we do have this 3-man breakaway away, and it's gone out a bit now. 4 minutes and 36 seconds, so the elastic is stretching again. Meanwhile, the concertina of the peloton is under the control of one squad. Well, from the helicopter here now to the red roofs of the Vendée region, as we continue to see the riders here at the back. The quick-step rider there is Sylvain Chavanel, the new French champion, and richly deserves his title as well. Sylvain, he was a bit of a hero in the Tour de France in the early days last year. You may recall when they were in the pouring rain in the Ardennes and the riders were wanting not to race and go on strike. Chavanel was making the most of that. He would have he kept his yellow jersey. He lost it on the cobblestones. He won it back. He had a very good opening week to the Tour last year.
No, he certainly did. It was amazing to see him win the yellow jersey, lose it, then get it back once again.
Yeah.
He is a very strong rider. He's very well respected within Team Quickstep, and a strong supporter of riders like Tom Boonen when it comes to the cobbled classics. And in the early part of his career, he spent most of his time riding for Team Cofidis, but he actually said he wanted to go to Belgium to learn how to ride the one-day classics, and he's earned an awful lot of his trade across the border in Belgium.
Cheers all the way today for the Tour de France. The French are never happy when this race is off and running for the month of July, because that's the famous holiday period here in France, and many of the French make the way to the roadsides to follow the route de Tour. It's going out, Paul, and this so often happens after that big sprint at Avrillé. It's now gone out to 4:36, and well, they've always got a chance. There is the leader of the King of the Mountains competition. Unfair advantage, I think.
No, certainly. I think that you'll start to see that the main field will be attentive now. They'll be extremely attentive at the front end of the main field, and they will keep a very close watch on that gap. And once they start to feel it is dangerous, what they will do is they'll pick up the pacemaking. And you can see that line of riders at the front end of the peloton. Well, that's a number of teams getting themselves organised, starting to pick the pace up to keep that 3-man breakaway in check. And again, not a surprise to see Omega Pharma Lotto. They, as I've said, have got a two-pronged attack here at the end of today. It could be either for Philippe Gilbert, and of course it could be for their big man André Greipel, who's been on the ground, as has the man on the front end of the main field, number 37, Jürgen van der Walle, who was involved in a very nasty crash just a little while back.
Yes, well, we're looking now at the rise of Garmin Cervelo here. They've had a good start to the day, haven't they? Now, make sure to sign up for our Travelers Fantasy Cycling Challenge. You have until stage 4 to figure out your roster on them before official game starts as well. Just log on to NBCSports.com/challenge for the chance to win a grand prize trip to next year's tour. And if you win today's stage, you'll receive an official signed head sweats and headwear. So that's a very interesting competition, and it's always proved popular over the last few years, so enjoy that. So the race gets ever closer to the finish. We're approaching the feed at Horosnay. We're not there yet. The peloton have turned off a little bit now, so those 3 riders are going to lead for a while yet. What a chance to ride against the pros in a Tour de France stage. Of course you do. Now you can enter for a chance to win in the Aquapola Tour Challenge. Each day you ride during the tour, you will be entered for a chance to win great prizes. Sign up today at mapmyride.com/TDF and enjoy that. Well, as the windmill circles here by the finishing line, we go back out to the leaders here, still around about 50 miles away, but they're approaching the feeding station now. They broke away in the first few hundred yards of the day here. Meanwhile, the peloton has decided now it's time for the domestiques, the kitchen helpers on the strong teams of the sprinters to start work. And this is the Omega Pharma Lotto team. Their big sprinter is Andre Greipel, just beaten moments ago by Tyler Ferrer for that sprint halfway through the race. We are entering now the feed zone here. This is where the riders grab those little bags with their favourite tidbits in to see them through the day, and no doubt some nice cold drinks as well. And you can hear the French loving every minute of this. They're recognising the green jersey of Europcar because this is a local business in this region. Perfect catch, well done. And it's what they want in the bag here today. It's what the masseur will have prepared overnight for them. They will have said, just give me this, just give me that. Probably a sandwich or maybe a roll. Sometimes, as Tommy Simpson, the great British cyclist, used to say, because he came from Yorkshire, just put me a jam butty in there, that'll be good enough. And because it's not what you eat now, it's what they eat tonight. But you need to fill that little hole in the tummy. Just look at these crowds here now. These are the 3 leaders coming to 3 3/4 minutes ahead. Well, these are the moments of the tour that has made this a great festival as the riders pass through the feeding station. The gaps continue to come down now as the team of Andre Greipel, the German sprinter on the Belgian squad, has told the boys to get up now and start riding for the finish, because he's going to feel pretty confident after finishing second to Tyler Farrer in that green jersey sprint at Avrilay.
Well, a huge crowd assembling just after the feeding point, Phil, as you can see, because they know this is the point where you've got a very good chance of getting those free souvenir bottles or small bags that the riders usually throw them off once they've emptied them.
.332, these are the leaders. Jeremy Roy on the back, 2 Frenchmen on the front of the race at the moment. And the other rider here is Westerer, who's a Dutchman. On Vacances Soleil, and this is a perfect place to take your holiday beneath the sun in the Vendée region. 86 kilometres left to go, about 54 miles. Well, there is a lovely little reverse angle view of the motorbike of our cameraman there as the field come through. Now, there are quite a number of teams in the Tour de France this year ride on the Specialized bicycle. And it costs a lot of money to furnish up a whole team, never mind 3 of the teams. So now we have Craig Hummer standing with Nick Sims of Specialized to show us more on their brand of new SL4 bikes.
Joined by Nick Sims, head of global PR for Specialized. Nick, fans of your bikes know that for years the best of the world have won not just world championships, Tour of Flanders on your bikes 4 separate times, as well as Grand Tours, but you think all that has culminated in the SL4?
Absolutely. Some of the cool features that we have with the SL4 is the Cobra head tube shaping. And what that's allowed us to do is actually shrink the bearing size from the 1.5 inches that was on SL2s and SL3 to 1 3/8 inches. We haven't lost anything in stiffness in the front end. So steering precision is still second to none. And then when you go to the rear end of the bike, you can see the seat stays. They taper at the top end, so you get some nice vertical compliance. They bulge out around the braking area and then taper again at the rear end. So the whole bike itself, torsionally, is 19% stiffer than the SL3. For a rider, what does that do? That means the bike is going to track, corner better than anything else out there. On those descents, when you're doing 60 miles an hour, you need to know there's a good connection between the front and the rear of the bike. So that's what we've managed to do with the SL4, and you know, in the tarmacs that have gone before it, we hope it's going to be a winner.
And you and I both know at the end of the day, in a 3-week Grand Tour, it's not just about saving energy, but it's certainly about going fast.
All smiles. Thank you, Craig and Nick, there for that information on the Specialized bicycles there, which are in action today. And as we look here at the peloton now, they're passing through a gap of around 3:22 behind the leaders. The 3 leaders still clear. Now it's a bit of a conjuring act, isn't it, when you're in the big pact? Paul Sherman was usually at the front when it was time to take the food, weren't you, Paul?
The only reason I went to the front, Phil, was because it was the safest place to be, because you don't want to get caught in this kind of thing that's going on at the back. Riders zigging and zagging left and right to make sure that they can pick up that bag. It is extremely dangerous. In the feeding zone here, they'll probably have 2 liquid bottles. They'll probably have a bottle of a carbonated drink, which most of the riders like, which name I won't give you the name of,
okay,
but you can get it quite readily around France. And of course they will look then to their liquid gels and their food and power bars, and maybe if the soigneur is feeling really good, a nice apple tart or something like that.
But the great danger is the way they throw these feeding bottles off, because a rider hits those, there'll be a nasty crash. So there we are. Obviously some boys at the front have decided to put on the pressure, while the boys at the back having to catch up now, having grabbed their little musettes, as they're called, and quickly get the food transferred into the pockets of the Lycra. The Tour de France speeds on, but they haven't caught them yet. The gap 3:19.
And by SRAM Componentry, beyond performance.
Well, we stay in the department of the Vendée all day today. This is the replay of the sprint at Avrillé for those valuable green jersey points. Just watch how Tyler Farrar cleans up here. He's chased by Andre Greipel, while the man dropping back and bouncing off the riders there is Mark Cavendish, who seemed to start too early or something. He certainly fell out of contention. Farrar has made a great start in the chance of wearing the green jersey at least by the finish of the day today. There's the peloton, 50 miles to go. Well, as we look down at the peloton, around about 50 miles from the finish, Paul, the gap is 3:09. I think, if for the magic of television, we can go down the road that 50 miles and jump into the Garmin Cervelo team car. Jonathan Vaughters, Phil Liggett here. Can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you just fine.
Terrific. So, you must be feeling pretty pleased with that first sprint, I would think, getting the better of all the top sprinters in the race with Tyler Farrar.
Well, you know, I mean, I've certainly, it's a big confidence boost to Tyler, that's for sure. You know, I mean, today the finish is a little bit tough for him, so we're definitely focusing on Tord as our game plan for the finish today. But, you know, I think from what I saw, that bodes very well for the rest of the race. I mean, Tyler certainly seems to be coming into the Tour on really, really good form, and we're really pleased to see that after the last couple months that he's had to go through.
Well, Jonathan, Paul Sherwin here, just coming up to the finish, talking about the finish. Thor Hushovd is a strong finisher. I spoke to Sean Kelly before the start. He said this is the kind of finish for a strong man. And Thor seems to be coming right into form at the right time. And how's his confidence after getting that stage victory in the Tour of Switzerland?
Well, his confidence is definitely up. I mean, he's feeling good. He's feeling good about today, and you know, he's fit. I mean, he's fit and ready to go. That's for sure.
Jonathan, what do you think happened to Mark Cavendish? Did you? Well, you got a television in that car. Did you see the sprint?
I do have a television in the car, but I didn't see the sprint. So yeah, no, I have no idea. He got beat. I know that much.
Well, you're absolutely right. Now, so you don't really think this is for Tyler Farrar, the uphill sprint? It's more for the God of Thunder, is it, Hushovd?
Yeah, today's finish for sure it is. I mean, it's a tough finish. It's, you know, it's a very, very hard finish. I mean, for me, you know, Philippe Gilbert is obviously going to be up there. I'd say, you know, Joaquin Rojas will also be up there. You know, there's a number of, you know, Matt Gois. I think HCC will definitely have a rider up there with Matt Gois. So, but with Garmin, Cervelo, our game plan, you know, is Tor Hushovd today.
Well, at the moment, if you can't see it, I'll give you some inside information. It's the whole of the Omega team on the front. So they seems to me they're either extremely confident in Gilbert or they might believe Greipel can get up there. I wouldn't think so, would you?
No, I think it's for Gilbert today for sure. You know, the finish is a little bit harder than it looks on paper. I mean, we actually reconned it twice. I mean, we did the stage a few days ago, and then the guys rode it just the last 40K of it yesterday, and it's a harder finish than it appears on the stage profile.
Jonathan, just another quick question concerning the run-up towards the finish. Tyler Farrer's got himself some points already at that first intermediate sprint point, getting himself 4th place. Has he got a thought now that he might be able to grapple the green jersey on the opening stage?
Well, you know, I mean, overall, we're going to definitely focus on stage wins. I mean, of course, if the green jersey falls in our lap, we're not going to say no, but we're really focusing on stage wins for the race. So, you know, we're going to take it day by day. I mean, we're hoping for something good today. We're hoping for something good tomorrow. We're hoping for something good the day after that.
Okay, well, let's see. Maybe tonight, Jonathan, you don't have to answer this, that Tor Hushovd will be in yellow and Tyler Farrer in green. Now, that should keep you happy for the next couple of hours. Thanks very much, Jonathan, and we'll catch up with you again later on the tour.
All right, thank you very much, Phil.
Well, I must say, Paul, that's a good start whichever way you look at it, but they are very confident, the Omega Pharma Lotto team, in Philippe Gilbert today. They know this man seems to have found this magical ability to just leave the peloton on an uphill finish and win. He's done it 13 times this year.
Well, he's made that his speciality over the last couple of seasons in most of the races he's ridden around the world, but I think the nod has come from the team management. Guys, it really is quite a long way to go. Let's keep something in the bag because we're going to have to do an awful lot of work later on.
Well, there they are. This is a Belgian-based team, Omega Pharma Lotto. They're not all Belgian riders on. They've got 3 or 4 Germans making up the whole squad, including Andre Greipel. Well, since we got off to a rather rocky start, quite literally across the Passage du Gois, we had Andre Greipel fall off early on. We've had Anthony Charteau, when the King of the Mountains last year, fall off, but okay. And we've had 1 or 2 other riders fall off, but all getting their early souvenirs on the roads of the Vendée as they come out to play for the next 3 weeks. But nobody's injured. That's all that matters. We don't want to see that. This is the highlight of a pro cyclist's career. So there we are, all talking to each other, but let me remind you, make sure you are playing the IZOD race for the podium sweepstakes. You log on to nbcsports.com/podium every day during the tour for your chance to win a trip for 2 to the 2012 Tour de France and the Cervelo S5 bicycle. You can also win a clean bottle and Giro helmet, and today's code word, there it is breakaway. So that's a beautiful chateau at Vive le Tour 2011. We're going to hang in and show you the sprint again. Tyler Farrer of the USA is led the way to the first big points for the green jersey. We'll go back to the finish later. See you in a minute. We're back beneath the sun in Vendée, and we're looking at Philippe Gilbert, the champion of Belgium, slipped to the back. He just slid out the back of the peloton. Now, he won his national title last Sunday. Before that, he finished 2nd in the national championship on 3 occasions and a 3rd on 1 occasion, but he'd never won it till last weekend. He's just having a chat on tactics, I think, back at the team car there. Now, as he goes back to the pack there, Paul, it's time to remind ourselves he's finished 3 times 2nd in that national championship and once 3rd. He never won it till last weekend. But why would he himself drop back to the team car?
Well, very good point. I'm not sure, but this is a point of the race where it's not that important to ride at the front end of the main field. The pressure is certainly off, and he probably just wanted a direct chat with the team manager.
Well, as it looks as though we've got a bit of a crash here, just as Gilbert raced back into the field from a chat with the team management. 1 or 2 riders have stopped for a natural break, but I think they might have given a better instruction here. I don't think anybody fell down, but I'm not sure. I think 1 or 2 did fall down there.
Well, again, Phil, this is one of the reasons why you've got to be very careful. Fabian Cancellara in his new jersey of the national champion of Switzerland. Now, he could be an outsider for the victory here this afternoon because he is a strong rider, and in the past he's got himself over these climbs of 1 to 2 kilometres. And of course he was the dominant man in the early part of the season, Phil, in Paris-Roubaix and the Tour of Flanders.
Well, we momentarily lost the race now. We'll have to find them again. But they came to a grinding halt here. This is the Chateau of Bercé.
Yeah, built between the 15th and the 19th century. It overlooks the Luçon Plain, and it was very famous for an extremely bloody battle here that opposed the Republican armies and the Catholic and Royal armies in August 1793. It's between the two rivers of Le Lay and the Smagne towards the south.
And it's got a beautiful arrangement of dovecotes down there as well. There are 3,000 holes, and each of the holes correspond to a hectare of the estate's land. That's a lot of doves down there.
It certainly is. That second tower you can see on the right-hand side, by the way, that was added in 1577, and it's 24 metres high. There's a 34-metre long walk to get to it.
Right, well, that should sell the chateau. I hope it's up for sale because our helicopter's giving you an all-round view of it here. The riders, though, are recovering from that little minor shunt there when 1 or 2 riders decide to stop. The racing lanes all around here are quite narrow when we come off the main road, but they're idyllic for cycling. And tomorrow, when we have the team time trial, the teams will start 7 minutes apart in the 9-man formations, and the roads apparently are very narrow for most of the team time trial. So that should be a great race tomorrow. So as we continue to look at the boys talking, there are 4 main jerseys in the Tour de France, and they all count very much for different classifications. So Paul Sherwin can now explain all of those jerseys to us, then we'll understand it for the next 3 weeks.
At the Tour de France, success can accurately be measured by the colour of a cyclist's jersey.
Now the yellow jersey goes to Alberto Contador, and Andy Schleck will have to rethink his tactics now.
The most coveted garment in cycling, the famed yellow jersey, is a flashing light to signal who's in the lead. In recent years, it's been carried into Paris by Contador, but vehemently pursued by his top challengers as well. And once again, yellow will likely be symbolic of the premier rivalry in cycling. But not every competitor has legitimate title aspirations. And for those who might not chase yellow, other prominent distinctions exist.
The green jersey, it's back on the shoulders of Alessandro Battaglia.
Rather than focus on yellow, the sprinters in the field hunt a jersey made of green. A running tally of points to settle the issue of bragging rights as the fastest competitor on the road. It is an art practiced masterfully by Mark Cavendish, but never before perfected in France. 15 stage wins at the Tour, but still hoping to harness a green jersey victory.
I've got to admire Anthony Charteau. He's not one of the world's greatest climbers, yet because he's wearing the polka dot jersey of leader, he is attacked on the most difficult days and he's scoring points.
Where climbing is concerned, the measure of excellence is easy to spot. The Tour's King of the Mountains will always display the repeat pattern. Formidable climbing and an ascent to the polka dot jersey.
So there he is, the white jersey. He equals the record set by Jan Ullrich. He'll be looking for yellow next year for sure.
For cyclists aged 25 and under, the white jersey is a warning shot for an impending rise to prominence. The perfect blueprint for the top young rider. Capture white and later turn it into Tour de France gold. From yellow to green to polka dot to white, they are the 4 most prized possessions at the Tour. Each one carrying its own distinct honour for those with the honour of wearing it into Paris.
Yes, and if you do keep those jerseys well, then you really have entered the Tour de France at the top. These are the 3 leaders here, still dancing on those pedals and holding off the peloton. They've moved it out now to over 4 minutes again, and there's why. The peloton have shut off the power. They're all almost talking to each other here. For some reason, Omega Pharma-Lot have decided now not to race at the front anymore. Significant as the break has now gone out again to 4:28 is the last check I've got, and still 45 miles to race. So there's still time, of course, to reel them back in. They're going to be pretty tired by the end of this race. 119 miles in the front, which is what it would be if they were going to ride all the way to the finish on the front today. Long live the Tour there. and they'll all second that here in this region. It is a very popular region. They love the Tour de France here. Just tickling, what, 22 kilometres an hour. Even I could keep that up right now in the Tour de France. They're in no hurry to pick up the 3 leaders as they continue to chat there. Number 17 is Joost Postma, the Dutchman, on the Leopard Trek team. We'll take another break. Rejoin us. Well, we're with the Tour de France right now, and they're slipping backwards a little bit. 5 minutes 29, the gap now, 43 miles still to race. 3 riders out in front for the whole of the day. It looks as though we've got a giant sandbank washed in off the 150 miles of beaches here, but it's not. That's a field as we race through the Vendée here. The peloton under the escort now of all of the television cameras and the still cameraman as well. It's a nice wander around the Vendée. We stay in this beautiful department of France all day today, and the crowd, wherever they can get to the course, come in their hundreds. They're enjoying it. The French flags fly, but this is very much an international race these days, and we see plenty of flags from all of the nations. Dave Zabriskie here from the Garmin-Cervelo team, the same team as Tyler Farrar. We saw him in action earlier, winning that sprint from the peloton. He's had his own ups and downs in the Tour. He's been in yellow. He's also fallen off in yellow and lost it. But Dave Zabriskie will be a strong man, especially tomorrow in the team time trial for Team Garmin-Cervelo.
The important thing, Phil, about the team time trial is it's not about the individual strong bike riders that you may well have on your team. It's about taking advantage of every individual member of the 9-man squad, taking the maximum you can out of the weakest link in the chain. And that's the important thing, and that's why a lot of teams have invested time and money into making sure that they can get this team time trial right.
I like that. Good analogy. The weakest link in the chain. Very good.
Thank you very much.
Oh, it's a pleasure. We're looking here at Jeremy Roy, who's won just a handful of races in his life, but he always knows how to get in front of the TV cameras, and he's kept on the FDJ squad because he's such a strong rider. The pack, though, in no hurry once again as we go out to 5:33. It's a little rise. There's one or two nasty little rise here. I actually had the pleasure of riding with some of the VIPs with Garmin-Cervelo yesterday morning. Can you believe that's the first time I've ridden a bicycle on the Tour de France in 25 years, but they gave me a terrific machine. Cervelo did, and it was the S5, brand new. They said it went well up hills. Well, it must have done, because I wasn't dropped on the climbs with the boys, but we went around these beautiful lanes, and it made me wish that perhaps if I could just get rid of the Tour de France, I could stay behind and go for a quiet ride. We're looking at Bradley Wiggins sporting for the first time the National Road Race Champions colours for Great Britain, because he has actually just won that title a week ago. He's also the National Time Trial Champion, so he gets to wear the British Champions colours in all events this year. Now, as we look at the peloton going by, we've seen Tyler Farrar take out that sprint from the peloton earlier. Well, now we can find out what he had to say before he started this morning, because here he is chatting with Robbie Ventura.
Tyler, it's been a rough year for you emotionally. How are you feeling both mentally and physically heading into this year's Tour de France?
It has been a bit of a roller coaster, but I think I'm doing all right, and I'm here, I'm focused, I'm healthy, so hopefully it'll be a good tour.
You've been second and third here at the Tour de France. Put into words how important winning a stage here at the Tour means to you.
Well, it's the biggest race in the world, so of course you want to win. I've come close. I think that just makes you want to win even more.
Talk to us about the green jersey. Where does that stack up on your list of importance?
Green jersey is the green jersey. Everyone would love to win it. The first objective is a stage. That's, like I say, that's the big thing I'm missing. But definitely will be keeping the green jersey in the back of my head, and we'll see how the race unfolds in the first half.
Well, there's an opportunity today halfway through the stage. You're going to try to light it up and get some early points?
Yeah, I think we'll see how the race is going. But I think if the points are up for grabs, if you want to be serious about the green jersey, you got to give it a try.
And how about the finish? Is it set up well for you, for your teammates? How are you going to play that out?
I think it's a good finish for Tour today, so hopefully we can set him up well.
Good luck today.
Thanks.
Yes, Tyler Farrar there has grabbed the point already on the race. It's been a tough year for him because father injured in a crash, one of his best friends injured in a crash, and also he lost his man he said was as good as a brother to him, Wouter Velens, a Belgian mate he trained with, who died this year in the Giro d'Italia. So he's going to have to fight all of those emotions as this race unfolds. But he's off to a great start, and that's all that matters right now. Well, the breakaway here is off to a great renaissance, I think is the best way to put it, at 5 minutes and 16 seconds in the lead. At the moment, still 66 kilometres to go. That's just over 40 miles still to race, so the big pack can still do their job and reel them all in before we get to the finish here on the outskirts of Les Herbiers. See you in a moment. Yes, welcome back. This is the story so far with some 64 kilometres still to ride. A breakaway going from the gun today. Jean-Miroir, Kemeneur and Vester breaking away. Breakaway peaked at 6:30. Roy won the interim sprint and the current gap is just on 5 minutes. So, as we look now at the riders continuing their route here, these three boys making it look quite useful right now as they... I think, you know, they might stay away for probably, I don't know, what would you say, Paul, another 10 kilometres, 10 miles or less?
I think it's going to be a little bit longer than that because the main field doesn't want to catch them too far out from the finish. I think we'll probably see a catch at around about 20 kilometres to go. That's 12.5 miles. They won't even start to switch it on in the front end of the main field until we get to around about 40, 45 kilometres to go.
Well, it's interesting to see that the Americans have put Dave Zabriskie on the front of the pack now, and that, of course, will be for Thor Hushovd, I think. So Hushovd looking for the support of Garmin Cervelo now, and the tempo is clearly lifted up, and look how the clock has started to descend so quickly here. Now they've turned angry again. The parting of the ways, they're coming up to togetherness, and the gap is 4 minutes and 37 seconds, and coming down reasonably quickly now. It's a beautiful area, I've said it before, but the undulations here now as we go through the plane trees here in western France. And everybody wants to get the nose to the front now. They sense we're getting to the serious section of the day stage.
Might see the Saxo Bank riders over on the left-hand side. What they're doing is keeping Alberto Contador at the front end of the main field, and that is Alberto Contador just peeking through their fill with his yellow sunglasses on.
Well, the thing about the route today, now we've had pretty flat roads since we left the Passage du Gois, which obviously is at sea level and sometimes below sea level. But towards the end of the day now, we do start to undulate quite a little bit as we go over these small monts, these little hills, as we head towards the finish itself. And once we go over the high spot of the day, we'll go down towards the valley, but not to sea level where we are just now. Then you've got that little climb up to the finish in the outskirts of Les Herbiers.
Yeah, that little climb up to the finish, Phil, at 2 kilometres is going to get one or two riders unstuck. Just down there in the middle, you might just notice that monument. That's the monument to Georges Clemenceau, who lived between 1841 and 1929. He was a doctor until 1885, then a journalist, and then he was elected mayor of the commune of Montmartre.
Yes, and the German soldiers in the Second World War broke off the head, and it was replaced rather fittingly after the war was over. But 4:28 is the gap now. And now it's interesting to see the arrival of some of the French teams here. In the red and white is the Cofidis squad also moving up. They've got a good sprinter on their squad. And you never know, he's a good sprinter, Paul. He's a Colombian, but he also can climb a little bit. So this finish might suit him.
It might suit him, but I'll tell you one thing I noticed the day before the Tour de France. I did notice that Samy Dumoulin from Team Cofidis was also out on the course, and he was actually riding the last kilometre. Kept riding up, going down, riding up, going to try and get a feeling for where would be the ideal place to make the move. And he was second on a very tough stage of the Criterium du Dauphiné on a similar kind of finish.
Right, so Leonardo Duque, another man to conjure with when we come down to the finish here. We'll move on now and let's have a little look now from our historian on the Tour de France, Paul Jones. We'll look at the Chateau de Saint-Emine.
Yeah, again, 15th to 17th century, this chateau. It's built in the outskirts of town. It was actually rebuilt in 1620 and used to belong to the Dukes of Tremouille, and was formerly the seat of the second Baron of France. Most of the visitors that came through here included guys like Philip III and, of course, Henry IV.
Well done. And every week, the opening week in August, there's a one-off festival there illustrating the whole history of France. And now they can add in the passage of the Tour de France in the year 2011. So for me, it's quite clear now that Jonathan Vaughter, we've heard him, is looking to Thor Hushovd to take this stage today, and with it the first yellow jersey. When we come back, we'll take a closer look at Thor, the God of Thunder, wearing his new jersey as world champion.
I like the jersey. I won it twice. I always like to be in there. Last year I really missed something in the bunch sprints, but I was really strong in the hills.
Yes, yellow is the colour every cyclist in the Tour de France wants to wear at least for one day in the life of the Tour de France. And the man who's done it as a world champion is Thor Hushovd. But right now it's Thor Hushovd's teammate who's riding at the front there, Dave Zabriskie, and that is for one reason only. They have faith in Thor Hushovd today. If they can unleash him on the finishing climb, the man who won the World Cycling Championship last year in Geelong in Australia could well be the rider pulling on the first leader's yellow jersey tonight, and it will be for the American team, Garmin Cervelo. So let's have a look then at the athlete profile of Thor Hushovd. He is now our Le Monde Fitness athlete profile. Here comes Thor Hushovd, God of Thunder, hits the line. It's Hushovd, though, is the strong man, and it's Thor Hushovd who gets it. It's going to be a very close finish, but Hushovd has taken it by the width of his tyre, and that is the first victory of the world champion since he won the title.
Winning the World Championship was, of course, my highlights in my career so far. Just enjoyed every day with a jersey on my shoulders. So I was happy with my Tour de France 2010. I won the stage I really want to win. Yeah, I also had a few days in green jersey. I like the jersey. I won it twice. I always like to be in there. Last year I really missed something in the bunch sprints, but I was really strong in the hills. Kind of attacked during the stages to get intermediate points. Unfortunately, I lost too much in the normal bunch sprints. I think I changed a little bit as a rider the last couple of years. First of all, getting older, and you see the younger riders, they come and they, of course, are faster than you. It's not that you lose the motivation, but you find other goals or directions. My goal is to win one stage win, and of course my dream goal would to win stage one. So I win one stage and with yellow jersey.
Well, that's your Le Monde Fitness athlete profile. Thor Hushovd, the world champion, has won 8 stages of the Tour de France in history now, but he'd like to win the yellow jersey rather at the end of the opening stage today. He's 2 times the green jersey winner, and as I say, he is the current world road race champion. Well, at the team presentation, his image was personified. This is how the God of Thunder was introduced to the crowd. A massive crowd at the Puy de Fou, which is on the outskirts of Les Herbiers. And it's a reconstructed ancient village there, and up comes the God of Thunder. Yes, and boy, this finish does suit him, and the team are with him today. They're banking on him rather than Tyler Farrar. This is the quick step champion, the new champion of France, Sylvain Chavanel, who rides on a Belgian team. As the boys are getting down to business now, the sharp end, as we continue into the last 57 kilometres. So as they continue to keep on the pressure now, I don't think we're going to see it drop back anymore, Paul. They're going to keep on the tempo now until they reel these boys in. They're doing it, as we say, regularly. They're not actually chasing them flat out.
Well, the guy ripped up at the front, Jurgen van der Walle, was in that very strange crash, and really can't understand. I think he must have touched the wheel of a rider in front of him, but it's not stopped his ardour of coming to the front end of the main field. He's got himself fill into that kind of a zone that you can when you're a team domestique or a team helper. He's got himself into his own psychological little balloon here, just to ride as hard as he can, because all he's thinking about is Philippe Gilbert finishing it off for him.
Well, Jurgen is in his 4th tour, but you know, he crashed out of the tour. The only time he never finished the tour was 2 years ago, and he crashed out. Well, he didn't start the 3rd day because he crashed on day 2, and he's gone 1 day earlier this year, but this looks far less serious, and those souvenirs should heal up nicely before we get to the Pyrenees, which is a week away. But the peloton now, we're getting into the ripples of the Vendée now, where it's getting quite much more hilly here. There's no mountains as such, but they will nag at the legs, and they are absolutely perfect for organising the chase to start bringing back those 3 front runners. 3:38 is the gap. 56 kilometres are still to ride to the finish. Now that should be time enough. Well, it could be the Passage du Gois, but it's not. It's the local field here, and there's only one man in there. That's the farmer and his tractor.
No, it certainly is. That is the Donjon de Bazoges en Parade, and a donjon, by the way, is an old prison where they used to lock people up, but it's also a watchtower as well.
So I suppose donjon is French for dungeon, is it?
Correct, or a keeper is what we used to call it in English. It was built for the 100 Years' War by Jehan Girard, who was the Lord of Bazoges, and it was later part of an older castle, which you can't actually see. Well, you can see the remains of it, but there was a castle there up until the 16th century.
The race is going just alongside, but not through here, so they won't get to see these pictures. We send our helicopter wandering off into the countryside occasionally to show us the beauty of France, because in fact we know just how much our viewers around the world just love to see this part of France. And it took the French a long time, Paul, to realise what they had in this world-class cycle race, that it wasn't just a cycle race. People came here for many other reasons.
Well, I tell you what, a lot of people make their holiday coming here, and it's really, the Tour de France has become an advert for the whole of the country of France, and they're showing off not only their incredible architecture, they're showing off their history, and of course they're showing off some of the best professional bike riders in the world. So it's a nice little mix. I think they've finally put themselves together, and of course it's magnificent in HD.
Absolutely right. Well, we've got the 3 riders away from 0 kilometre today. They were out of the traps like rabbits, and the gap has been over 6 minutes, but it's back again once more to 3:37. And we'll wait and see. It gets a little bit hillier as we get round towards the last 20 kilometres. We get to the high spot of the day. Then a few descents, and the descents here can be quite difficult. Narrow lanes, sharp hairpin bends on them. Calls for a little bit of skill, especially if you're in a peloton of 195 cyclists. And you've got to be very careful, because the Tour de France, it won't be won on a day like today, but if you misjudge some of these corners, you'll certainly lose it.
Well, 1 or 2 riders will have to be extremely attentive, Phil, as well, when they come to the final climb of the day, because I think you said to me as we drove up just 2 days ago to have a look at it, you said there will be time gaps at the top of this climb, and some riders, if they're not attentive, could lose 10, 15 or even 30 seconds.
Yes, and when you think the last few tours have been won by less than 3/4 of a minute, then you can't afford to give away silly time gaps to your main rivals. And at this stage, you're not too sure who your main rivals are. Just looking at our computer here, the pulse speed of Michael Bouffas, he's burning 217 watts, which isn't too bad, is it?
It's a fairly easy ride, that 143 beats a minute for an average speed of 25 miles an hour or 40 kilometers an hour. He's sitting comfortably in the main field. Once they start to put the pressure on, you'll see that wattage start to climb up to 300, 400, even 450.
Yeah. Amigo Farmalotto getting back to the front here for the man in black. And that's Philippe Gilbert. They really believe in Gilbert today. Well, wouldn't you, if you've won about 9 of your 13 races this year, finishing up a hill like we're coming to. The Tour de France is going to get hot, and then it'll get a little bit hotter. It'll all happen in the next 35 miles or so. Well, struggling with his chain here. This is Linus Gerdemann. They've just sort of gone straight on one of these narrow roads. 1 or 2 rides. There's a Europe car there somewhere. There he is, struggling to put his bike back together again. But I'm not sure who the Europe car rider is. Just heads over how it happened. Watch the right of your screen. They disappeared into the bushes there, and that wasn't planned. In fact, it was rather a heavy tumble by the Europe car rider on the right of our picture. It might be Pierre Rolland's. But this is the danger of these narrow roads when you're in a pack, and I think I emphasised that a bit earlier when we've got these narrow, short and sharp descents to come in the next 45 minutes or so. It just shows, you know, Paul, you can't relax because an accident literally is around the corner. But the peloton getting themselves back together. Linus Gerdemann still resting with his bike. He's going to have a little bit of a tough chase, and Gerdemann is a German cyclist rides by the side of the Schleck brothers, and he's one of their men for the big climbs later on. He'll be able to ride with them. He wore the yellow jersey once in the Alps a few years ago. So we'll see. I think he'll be okay, and he's not here to win the Tour, but he's going to have a tough ride to get back on.
But again, Phil, that's an indication of why you have to ride at the front end of the main field, because the majority of these accidents are at the back. Another one of the chateaux. This is a 15th century chateau we're looking at now. It was built by Philibert of Saint-Fleuve, and that was it was actually renovated and wasn't inhabited until the 17th century, when it was burnt down once again during the French Revolution.
Yes, and apparently there were 7 towers at one stage. Don't look like 7 to me at the moment, but it is still another beautiful example of French architecture. Now, the riders chasing behind the field at the moment, Linus Gerdemann, and I didn't recognise that guy from Europe car, Paul. Did you get a tag on? I think it was Pierre Rolland, but I wasn't sure.
Well, he went down very hard, and fortunately for him, it was a soft landing over to the right-hand side, because he managed to dive into the grass. If it had been a concrete road there, he would have had a very difficult, hard landing.
Well, just look at the edge. The breakaway are still finding the strength to push on here and keep this chase, and then make the others work very hard to bring them back. 32 miles, 51 kilometres to race. They won't give up yet for sure. Well, this is Jeremy Roy, who continues on here. As he continues on, let me remind you that we will continue on, because tomorrow morning the Tour de France on Versus is live at 8 Eastern Time. This is a great stage. It's the team time trial. We'll test the riders on the second day with additional coverage airing at 3 p.m. on NBC. Then Wednesday at 7:30 a.m. Stage 5 will take place within Brittany and will hug the Atlantic coastline. Tune in nightly at 8 Eastern for the Tour de France prime time on Versus as well. All the cheers for 3 men who've really settled into the race today to try and rob the peloton of it. Just looking down there with our little marker, pointing out Philippe Gilbert. He's our favourite today because he likes this sort of finish. The flag's fluttering there, indicating a gentle crosswind. It's not as strong as the wind yesterday. Had they finished up the climb yesterday, it would have been really difficult. But the wind eased last night, and it doesn't look as though it's come back with a vengeance today, so it might help them up the climb towards the finish. Still no message from the peloton saying if the chasers managed to get back into that pack for Linus Gerdemann, because he's a very valued member of the Leopard Trek team of Frank Schleck and Andy Schleck. And Richie Porte as well, the Tasmanian Australian cyclist who's in his first Tour. And last year won the best young rider in the Giro d'Italia, so he's riding his first Tour now. Just on 3 minutes at the moment as they continue. There's a lovely view around the lakes here in the Vendée as well. These are freshwater lakes, but we're very, very close to the Atlantic, of course, where they have about 150 miles of coastline in the Vendée region. So not surprisingly, it's seafood and fish, which is part of the main staple diet of this area. So as the helicopter wanders out along the course, we'll just give you some more information on the Aquaphor Le Tour Challenge. And Versus has teamed up with Map My Ride for the 3rd year to present the Aquaphor Le Tour Challenge. The challenge is your opportunity to ride alongside the top pros in the race, virtually, of course. Get out and ride. Submit your ride to mapmyride.com/TDF and compete to win the leader's jersey, just like the boys in the Tour do. Riders can also win more than $150,000 in random prize drawings, including top-of-the-line bikes, a trip to see the final stage in the 2011 Tour. Sign up today at mapmyride.com/TDF. The Tour de France goes on. Hey, we're only 30 miles from the finish, and they still haven't caught them. But they will, I think. See you in a moment. Welcome back to the Tour de France. We're in the beautiful department of the Vendée at the moment. We could give you hundreds of pictures around the Vendée, but this is our chosen Trek aerial view today as we look across this dam holding back fresh water, and we're not far from the Atlantic Ocean, of course, as the Tour de France continues now towards its finish, a little bit inland at Les Herbiers and a little bit uphill too on the Mont des Alouettes, which Alouettes is the French word for skylarks. This is David Arroyo, who's on the Movistar team. They've had such an unlucky season so far, Movistar. Let's hope it all changes for them in their first Tour de France. Just looking here at the Movistar squad, Paul, what a sad season they've had in many ways. The man that should have led them in the Tour de France, Javier Tondo, a garage door falling on his head and killing him, almost unthinkable. And then in the Tour de Suisse, that terrible crash to Maurizio Soler.
Yeah, the crash for Maurizio Soler, who seemed to be coming straight back to form, the form that he'd had from a couple of years ago when he won a stage of the Tour de France, and he won the King of the Mountains classification. He won the first stage of the Tour of Switzerland, then had a really nasty accident, and in fact he was put into an induced coma, and we still haven't had full confirmation of how he's progressing, but it seems to be that he's not doing all that well.
Well, they are trying to bring him out of what is an induced coma, but at the moment he is still in a coma, and as we learn more we will update you, but it has been a very, very serious crash. There's no doubt about that. His wife Patricia has been flown over from Colombia, and I think her ticket was sponsored by the Colombian Sports Federation there to bring her out to be by Juan Mauricio, who's in hospital still in Switzerland. He would have been the new leader of the squad here after the sadness of Javier Tondo. It's an amazing start for the brand new team. Let's hope they have a good tour.
Yes, I would like to hope so, and of course David Arroyo is not a bad bike rider, but they are backed up with some strong riders as well, because Jose Rojas could walk away with a stage victory for them, and he's newly crowned a champion of Spain, so he'll be on a high.
Yeah, Ventoso as well, who got up there in the sprint earlier, so yeah, we'll see. These are the boys who really threw the gauntlet out, and I think the gauntlet went straight into the Passage du Gois because they've been away since we started. That means they've been, we've got 45 kilometres left to go, so it's been an awful long day for these boys. By my watch, they've been in the lead for 4 hours.
That's a long day at the office for these three bike riders, but it's also a long day at the front of the television cameras, because as far as they're concerned, as far as their sponsors are concerned, it's getting the team brand in front of television viewers all around the globe, whether it's France, Belgium, Italy, Australia, New Zealand, or even South America.
All breathe in. There's always those that go the wrong way. Never mind. They're all missing the stop sign. That's the most important thing. Well, nearly all missing the stop sign, yes, as they get round that right-hand bend. A little bit of practicing for the mountain bike season there, but they're all safely round as they feel. See, the boys at the back have to really kick out of those corners and get back up to speed very quickly. It makes it very hard for riders at the back of the pack. The boys at the front are already settled down again, and they're not using so much energy.
Well, it is strange to see Julian Dean doing this pacemaking. Tommy Danielson there in third position. Team Garmin-Cervelo obviously feel they've got the winnings. Over the years, Jonathan Vortersveld from TAA Cref has built up an incredible squad, and when we looked at the squad that they took to the one-day classics in the early part of this season, it was one of the strongest, most in-depth squads of the world.
Tommy D lining up there behind Jürgen van der Walle. He's travelled the whole of America, I think. He was born up in Connecticut, north of New York, and then he went down to Durango, home of another famous cyclist there, Bob Roll, and then he finished up in Boulder, Colorado, where every sportsman lives, don't they?
It seems to be the epicenter, if you like, of American cycling. Everybody wants to go and live in Boulder, obviously because you're living at altitude. Nice, clean living, and there's some great places to go for bike rides and training around that area.
Saw the little flick of the right arm there from Jeremy Roy. Now he's wondering where the guy is. Here he comes, a Vestra. That's always the sign, say, I've done my bit, come and do your bit, and I'll go to the back and have a rest and a drink.
But what's happening? What's happening with the work done at the front by the riders from Garmin-Cervelo, the American team, one of 4 American teams in the Tour de France this year. They really are starting to have an effect on the front end of this gap.
27.6 miles to go, so that's time for me to say to you, make sure you're playing the Izod race for the podium sweepstakes. Log on to NBCSports.com/podium every day during the tour. It's your chance to win a trip for 2 to next year's Tour de France and the Cervelo S5 bicycle. You can also win a clean bottle and a Giro helmet. Today's code word is breakaway. That changes every day, by the way, so don't you all go away now. We want to see you here on Versus and NBC every day. Well, people in that chateau have just realised the tour's going nearby. Now, these are the roads, Paul, that we're looking at here, which I would hate to see as in a breakaway, because you can see exactly where the road goes. It's like somebody just shook out a carpet and it's come down in ripples.
Well, this is probably the hardest part of today's course, and as we go deeper into Bretagne, it will get much more difficult and much more lumpy. The first part of the course was extremely flat as we went along the coast of the Vendée, the coast of the Lumière, or the coast of light it's called in this area of France. And now it starts to get that little bit difficult. It'll have more of an effect on the breakaway as we start to build up, as you say, to the high spot of the day before plunging down into the outskirts of Les Herbiers and then kicking up that final 2 kilometres. There's going to be some sore legs tonight.
Well, there is, and we finish with this Category 4 hill at the end, which is the lowest of the hills in gradient. We start, HC is outside category, 1, 2, 3, follow in reducing order, and 4 is supposedly the easiest. But when the finishing line is on the top of the climb, that makes it really, really hard.
It certainly does, and everybody has had the chance to go out and look at this finishing course. A number of riders have made multiple ascents to try and figure out whether they're the kind of sprinter who can hold on to the front end of the pack till the last minute to open their acceleration. I have to say, not almost everybody is talking about Philippe Gilbert, but if you just look at the, well, sorry about the little bit of picture breakup, the rider in the green jersey there, up until last Sunday, he was wearing the red, white and blue of champion of France. That's Thomas Vaucler. He could create the surprise, and he's a very canny tactician, and he too is having his best ever season.
Interesting to see the red jersey of the other American squad here, BMC. I saw Cadel Evans there, who is probably, we'll slot him into 3rd favourite to win the Tour de France. He's had to say, there he is, just to the right of the rider in black. And now, why are BMC coming up here, do you reckon?
Well, look at the 3rd man in the line there. He's got the world champion bands around his shoulders. That's Cadel Evans. He's riding at the front end of the main field to keep himself out of danger. He's been robbed of a good chance of winning the Tour de France in the past, very often by silly accidents in the opening week or 10 days of the event. So that's why Team BMC from the United States have moved up to the front to keep Cadel Evans safe and sound.
Well, there's only a handful of Australians in the Tour this time around. That's the way the cookie crumbles. Over the years, you'll remember us commentating on Robbie McEwen. He's won more races than anybody else currently racing. But Robbie didn't make the cut for his Radio Shack team at this time around. He's just had his 38th birthday, and he's watching on television back home now in Belgium. But there's still plenty of others who could finish up the day in fine condition, and maybe Cadel's going to have a go. Another flick of the elbow by Jeremy Roy. And again, quick reaction coming through from Hugh Westra. They're willing to keep it going for as long as necessary. 42 kilometres to go. Experience the Tour de France like never before. Go to NBCSports.com/cycling and get your Tour de France all access. Watch every stage live online in your tablet or on your phone. Available now on NBCSports.com/cycling. Get Tour de France all access for just $29.95. Well, here we are now with the pack stalking the 3 breakaways at 2 minutes 2 seconds at the start of the day. 3 riders got away on this opening day of the Tour de France. Vestre, Kemeneur and Roy are still heading up the charge to the finish at the top of a little hill outside of Les Herbiers. Tyler Farrar has put himself in prime position for the first green jersey of the Tour. If he can finish off with a nice finish coming down, because he was 4th and best sprinter when we had the sprint at Avrillé in the green jersey competition. Wandering around past the Mouliron on Pered and the lovely little church here of Saint-Hilaire.
There's a 12th century fortified bell tower that you can just notice there on the church of Saint-Hilaire, and it is very famous for the chimes that it has when it rings out. And this is also the home of Jean de Lattre de Tassigny, which is a very famous family in this part of the world.
Yes, an old aristocratic farmers family, as we now move on to catch up with the Tour de France again. And there they go in the distance. Now, as the peloton start to regroup here, we've heard HTC High Road talk about the possibility of Cavendish winning today. And, well, one man who better to ask than the man who would do the winning, and that's Mark Cavendish. And here he is now talking with Craig Hummer at the start today.
Mark, there's been a lot of talk about the stage profile today. How do you see it playing out?
You know, it's a difficult finish. Suits classic riders, everybody's fresh. It's the beginning of the Tour de France, so we'll see how it goes. The wind's going to play a factor. I think it's going to be important to use your teams there, but we really don't know until we do. I think everybody here has got a chance, whether it be a sprinter or a climber. You know, it's that type of finish that if you're well positioned, you can get good. So I think it's really hard to predict a winner, but you know, we'll be trying for the win anyway.
With everything you've just said, and you used the important term "we," what will you be satisfied with today?
As long as the team comes away with a decent result, we'd like to get a yellow today. Simple as, but as long as we've got at the same time, we feel confident for the team time trial tomorrow, we can get the yellow jersey then.
There's been a lot of talk with the Garmin guys where both Tyler and Tor have said they've worked out somewhat of a schedule with the stages. Have you and Matt done that as well?
Pretty much, yeah. There's a lot of stages I can win, there's a lot of stages Matt can win. There's a lot of stages other guys in the team can win. We're pretty sorted on the stage win front, I think.
Aside from the stage, now with the new change in the green jersey format, is getting that first green jersey and going for the intermediate sprint something you thought about?
Yeah, you've got to go for them. There's a lot of points on offer for the intermediate, so we'll be going for them, but we'll see what happens. There's still a lot of points on offer at the end of stages.
All right, best of luck to you and the team.
Very much, thank you.
Yes, well, we've seen already Mark in action. It didn't work out too well for him in that sprint at Avrillé, and it certainly worked out well for the other American, Tyler Farrar, there, who took it out. And so he's only 4th on the day, but the first sprinter scored big points. So as we see the peloton here coming in now to the last 24 miles of the day, they're still chasing the 3 riders who broke away at the start of this 118-mile race today, which is started on the Passage du Gois with an attack by Louis Westre, Pierre Kemeneur and Jérémy Roy. They've had a lead approaching 6.5 minutes, but right now it is down again to now the lowest we've seen, 1 minute and 39. The peloton is now deciding enough is enough. At the midway point at Avrillé, Tyler Farrar, the American, finished best of the rest, but best of the sprinters, so he's carrying 13 points already in the new green jersey competition, the way it's scored, and he could be in green tonight if it worked out for him. Well, there's no doubt now, Paul, the landslide has started, and you're not going to slow them down. These boys now are at the lowest for about 4 hours.
And as we said, Phil, they're getting into the most difficult part of the race. Jérémy Roy of France, Pierre Kemeneur of France, and of course Louis Westre breaking up the French sandwich there for Team Vacances Soleil. They have tried hard. They built themselves up that maximum advantage. At one stage, it almost sneaked up to the 7-minute mark, but the main field have been extremely attentive. When they've felt it was dangerous, they've accelerated and brought it back to 2 to 3 minutes. Then they've allowed it to run again. But every now and again, there's a big acceleration in the main field. There's a change at the front end of the pack now, Phil, because all of the big leaders, Cadel Evans, Andy Schleck, Alberto Contador, they're moving up to the front post of the peloton because they can feel the nervousness starting to rise.
Yeah, a lot of teams are chasing, and that's the indicator, of course, as to which teams believe they can deliver the man to the line to win. HTC High Road have got a number of rides, and there's the world champion here is just stopping at the moment. I think it's just for a natural break, and it is. So the world champion, I think, is feeling confident. He can quickly rejoin the race. When you got to go, you got to go.
Well, there's always a moment in a race when you feel comfortable that there's not going to be a major acceleration, and Thor Hushovd have been a professional long enough to know exactly when to take that moment, and this is possibly the last moment in the race when you get a chance to take that natural break. That's an indication that he's feeling confident. That's an indication that he also wants to make sure everything is ready for this assault of this 2-kilometer climb up to the Mont des Alouettes.
And we see now, still as we've seen all day, Jurgen van der Walle there setting the pace along with his teammates, but not for Andre Greipel, but for the man in black who wears the champion of Belgium's jersey for the first time, and that's Philippe Gilbert. The great confidence he can finish it off. HTC think they can finish it off. Garmin Cervelo, another American team, thinks they can finish it off. It's going to be one heck of a finish, I know that, and it's all uphill for the last 2 kilometers. A good wide road too.
It is a very good wide road, but the sad thing is, Phil, if you take a glimpse to the right-hand side, you can see the finishing line and all the infrastructure at the top of the climb. And if you're not feeling too good, I'm sure you have a feeling going through your mind. You say, oh, do I have to drag my body up there?
Well, I'm sure because of the nature of the finish, they will split time the riders today, so we will see quite an array of splits. So if the boys with ambition for the team time trial tomorrow, when they're hoping for a yellow jersey, they're going to have to hold on close to whoever wins the day. And Omega Pharma Lotto have displayed all day that they've got the winner in the boy in black, yellow and red. We can just see in the centre of our picture on the tail of his team. It's all for one in Omega Pharma Lotto today.
It certainly is, but if you look at the red and black jerseys in the second file there, that's of course all for Cadel Evans, the Australian rider who's really nurturing some serious thoughts of trying to get himself a victory in the Tour de France for this year. A little bit further over, you might notice 151 in the red jersey. That's Reim Terame. He's the leader of Team Cofidis. I shouldn't think it'll be too long before Thor Hushovd gets himself back into the main field.
Yes, and as they continue to come now, these boys are working hard now, but also the team of Europe car for Tommy Voigtler as well. Andre Greipel is to the right. He's got the bandaged arm now. That's Johan Gien asking for the crowd to step back. He, by the way, is the first coloured cyclist to take part in the Tour de France. And he rides on Europe car. He won a stage of the Tour of South Africa in Port Elizabeth this year. So let's see if we can find Jonathan Gordon. We spoke to him early. He's in the team car, driving behind the race. Let's see if we can hear what he's saying.
1 minute 45, 1 minute 45. So we should be totally off the front right now. Let's just concentrate on making sure Tor and our GC guys are positioned well at the front. That's everybody. Try to just make sure Tor and our GC guys are positioned well at the front. The gap is 1:45.
Well, what he's saying there's the gap of those three leaders, but it's a little bit less than that now. And Thor Hushovd is now back. That's his man for the win today for Garmin Cervelo. He's told that everybody should be off the front, so he wants no team setting the pace. None of the riders of Garmin Cervelo setting the pace, and they want to get Thor Hushovd now positioned near the front, and anybody else on the team that they're planning for the overall result. And so letting the other teams plan the downfall of the trio out here just now. It's come back even further. Time of the race today, 3 hours 55 minutes. That was from when these broke away, so that's how long they've been in the lead today. So the field continues to hunt them down. We're just over 20 miles from the finish now, with the uphill finish to the end. And it's all started today now, and it's a long, long way, 3 weeks on the road to Paris. Welcome back to the Tour de France. Welcome back to the Tour de France. I hope breakfast is going down well on the west coast of America here as the riders toil late into the afternoon in France. Coming up 5 o'clock in the evening here. There's still about 45 minutes of racing left. These three boys have grabbed the television ever since the drop of the flag as they continue now to head up the charge to the finish. As we're watching the three riders up there briefly, we're now looking back 69 seconds or so down the road, and it is the team of Omega Pharma Lotto, the team of the champion of Belgium, Philippe Gilbert, who are whipping up the charge now to try and get those three back in the fold. Well, you can see as they come up out of the belly of the roads here now, we're in the undulations. It's up and down pretty much all of the way to the finish, and we finish on an up when we get down to the last climb of the day. 31 kilometers inside 20 miles from the finish. I think it's now D-Day for the chase as we look here at Liu Vestre along with Jeremy Roy and Perig Kemenier. These three have headed up since Christian Prudhomme, the director of the Tour de France, pulled his flag in just after the Passage du Gois and released the race in 2011, and they just went straight down the road, and they've been there ever since.
It was a pre-planned attack by these riders. They would have told their teammates in the team briefing in the team buses just before the start, stay near the front end of the main field, chap, because we are going from the gun. These big wide roads that we're going on now, these undulating roads, are not good for this three-man breakaway, because as we can start to pull back, we will see the relationship between that, the main field, and the leading group of riders. They have now finally got their prey in sight.
Yes, just literally in front of them now. It's a bit closer than they appear, but it's still about a minute. But the peloton now fanned right across the highway here, and they're going to have to split when they get to the end of it. Now they're all wondering who's going to finish it all off. Now comes the tactics now of cat and mouse. Nobody wants to finish anything off. Now what's up with Jens Voigt? Gone back for a chat.
Well, he's gone back to fill up. He's been to the bar to...
Oh, steady. Careful. Oh, dear me.
Well, I tell you what, he's gone back to fill up. You're allowed to take drinks on board up until 20 kilometers to go, but usually at 20 kilometers to go, the pressure is on so much that nobody wants to go back. So he's gone for the last possible time to make sure he can get as many drinks as possible for the team. I'm just trying to count how many he's taken on board there. 3, 4, 5, 6, and possibly a 7th.
Now he's got to go and find the boys in the big pack. Not an easy task when they're all going. That's the professional restart.
Well, he
bit of a push.
He has loaded up with 7 individual bottles there. He's probably carrying pretty close to 14 pounds of water, which he's got to drag through the main field and distribute to the rest of the lads.
As quickly as possible, because he wants to get rid of that weight, of course. Meanwhile, we've gone back to the leaders here, who have now been just over 4 hours out front. There's that roundabout we saw. Took about a minute to get to it in the end, and they've come together again in a big pack. Now comes the old tactic where they see them and they let them fry beneath the afternoon sun, because they really don't want to finish them off just yet. We're into the undulations of the back end of the course. Gone is the plateau around the Atlantic Ocean, and these are the ripples now of the Vendée as we go towards the finish outside of Les Herbiers.
They've still got a little bit of a false flat to drag up to. The high spot of the day is the finishing line, Phil, at a massive 232 meters above sea level, which is around about 600 to 700 feet.
But it's explosive power. It's not a long, steady climb, and the guys who want to win are going to have to get it right as we pass under this bridge here. Again, plenty of spectators. They've probably got time to get back to the cars and get round to Les Herbiers. They may not get up to the finishing line, though, because that road's been closed all day. And there's plenty of campers that have been in position for the last 2 days since we've been here.
Nice little sign there for one of the local boys at the stage, Vaucler on t'adore, which means Thomas Vaucler, we love you. And they certainly do. They love his racing style, and they love the way, and we actually love the way that he's raced this year, because he had a phenomenal season so far.
He has, and he's an entertaining rider, so you can't fail but like him. And he lost his French championship last Sunday, but he finished third, so that was not a bad defense of the title anyway. Looking there at the range of gears, there'll be fairly a high set of sprockets today at the back there, or cluster as it's known in America. And They were using the lowest of them as they start the climb, I would suspect. You can see the speed of the peloton now. Everybody getting anxious with just 28 kilometers to go.
Hey, Lucas.
Hey, Bob.
You want to go for a ride?
Today at 2 p.m. Eastern Time, the Tour de France will continue on NBC with additional coverage of today's Stage 1. It's additional coverage, too, of the Tour de France Stage 1 later today at 2 p.m. Eastern, and that is on NBC. As we gaze around another beautiful town here, we are now just 25, that's about 15.5 miles from the finish. And the peloton are closing now like a tornado. Look at them ride now as the boys of Amigo Farmer Lotto, the team of the Belgian champion Philippe Gilbert, are trying to shut this down now. So they can have Philippe Gilbert dance to victory. Now, let's see what we can find out about the finish now, because we can check in now with Robbie Ventura, who is actually at the finishing line, just outside our commentary position.
We're here on the final climb to the finish, and everybody's been talking about this being the deciding factor. I had a chance to catch up with Rod Ellingworth, Mark Cavendish's longtime coach and the performance director for Team Sky. He said this climb is going to be tough. However, what's behind me might even be tougher. There's 9 roundabouts, a bunch of traffic furniture, and a bunch of crazy turns that could really shake up this race. A rider who can position themselves properly is going to have a huge advantage. The other factor, the wind. If we have a heavy headwind, the sprinters are going to be at an advantage. Lower climbing speeds and lots of good draft. Don't forget, guys, if there's big headwinds and Cavendish and Greipel are positioned properly, they could win today.
Thanks, Robbie. You're getting me nervous now. Well, they do have a little bit of a wind, and it is a headwind, so it's going to make the final move very, very critical as they come up to the finish. So the peloton now, you can see the urgency on these boys' faces as they try to reposition themselves in the peloton. The 3 riders who have led from a 0 kilometer today and have been out front for so long are now on the verge of collapse. Just over half a minute, and the peloton not just catching in now, but also thinking as to where to ride towards the finish in this pack.
Big names moving to the front. I noticed Jürgen van den Broek, Thomas Vogler, and of course the Stegemans for Team Quickstep at the front end of the main field. That flag rippling on the right-hand side, you might just have noticed the black and white flag. That's the flag of Bretagne. Well, we're in the Vendée for the moment, but we will be heading up to Brittany soon.
Yes, and that really is a hotbed of cycling. 34 seconds, the blackboard said. It's pretty much agreeing with what our computer says out on course. Just look at the peloton here. This road is so wide they don't really know where to ride. They're diving all over the place to reposition themselves, taking advantage of the wide roads here to do what they can do. David Arroyo I saw scurrying back to the field there from the Movistar team.
Anthony Charteau in the green jersey sitting right at the back end of the race, the winner of the King of the Mountains competition last year, trying to make a comeback after breaking his collarbone in the early part of this season, but also one of the fallers on today's stage.
Yes, everybody just checking out everybody else here now, but they're taking advantage of this 4-lane highway to try and get themselves up to the front. If not themselves, but to drag up the men they hope will win for the team and reposition them. Just look at these guys checking out everybody as they go by.
Well, Romain Felu moving forward there for Vacances Soleil. He's, again, one of the kinds of sprinters who knows how to get himself over a small climb. They'll all be starting to get that little bit twitchy. They won't want to touch their brakes. They won't want to do too much of an effort, but they want to be close to the front. And that is a huge main field that's spread right across this highway.
And there's the lone escapers. The 3 of them dangle now. The bait just in front. It didn't look like it from the helicopter, but that was actually going uphill that road, and it'll sweep round to the right. And the boys aren't going to hold these riders off any longer, we know that. But what will happen when they do get caught? Because not everybody wants to take this lot to the finish in Les Herbiers.
Well, you can see grouping themselves together. HTC High Road, that was Bernie Eisel. These guys now are getting themselves really psyched up for the sprint.
We're looking at the 3 breakaways of the day, the champions of the day for sure, but now they're shortly to become anonymous again. We are getting into the last 22 kilometers of the day. The gap is inside 30 seconds. Jeremy Roy takes a look over his shoulder. It's one of resignation.
It is, because it's an awful sight when you turn around and you've been away in the breakaway for such a long time, and you can see the mass of the main field not too far behind you. You can almost feel their breath on the back of your neck, and you know it's all over now, bar the shouting.
2 first-timers in the first Tour de France. They didn't wait 10 meters before they went into the first escape of this year's Tour. Vester and Kemania. And good luck to them, but I hope they haven't thrown all their energy into one wind here, because they still have another 20 days of racing, and it's a very, very tough route.
It certainly is an extremely tough route. Looking at Tyler Farrar there, he's number 54. He knows today he's got a very good chance. You can see that he really wants to get something out of this. He got the first win over all of the other sprinters at the intermediate sprint point on the day, but I think, Phil, for me, he's riding a little bit too far back currently.
I don't think he's going to do anything up the hill. I think that's a foregone conclusion, but if he can just get a couple of places or finish in the first 25 up the hill, he might get enough points to pull on green tonight. The American thinking of that perhaps, but I think the bias of the team will be now towards their world champion, the Norwegian Thor Hushovd. That's the man they will want to try and lead to the finish today. Every team has a candidate for victory though on a finish like this, and everybody knows it. So that's why it's going to be tough. Now these poor boys are going to be left to fry, although the sun's gone in a bit now. It's chilled down at nearly 5:15 here on the west of France. But they don't want to bring them back, because once they're caught, somebody will attack.
Well, that's the idea. The idea is to try and catch a breakaway as close to the finish as possible, anything from 10 to 15 kilometers, and that prevents a repetitive nature of lots of attacks coming off the front end of the main field that the teams of the sprinters have to control. They don't want to have to do that, which is why they leave these guys hovering out in the front.
170 kilometers they have led the race today. That's about 108 miles, I think. As now is the chance for these 3, just a little bit longer perhaps, because they know the peloton is backing off just that little bit as Jeremy Roy continues. Just look at the head turning and the switching going on here now. Chris Anker Sorensen, Saxo Bank on the front as well. All the different teams represented now as they try to put their workers on what is a wide road approach to the finish.
Well, what's happening now is all of the riders from the different teams are trying to get together, club together to look after their own health and safety. They're trying to make sure that they can look after their leaders, trying to make sure that they're all placed and positioned right end at the front end of the field, because the leaders, guys like Cadel Evans, Andy Schleck, Alberto Contador, they may well not be thinking about winning today's stage, but they want to make sure that they don't get caught out by a silly split halfway up the climb and throw away 15 seconds.
Yes, absolutely right. Every second counts in the Tour de France amongst the top 5 or 6 riders who are capable of winning this race over its 3,500 plus kilometers. Vestre enjoying his first day on the Tour in the best possible manner, leading the race towards the finish. But at the end of the day, it's not going to make it for him. That is the 20 kilometers to go arch, 12 miles from the finish, and the peloton go under it just 11 seconds behind.
Well, you sometimes wonder if the main field are not really mean bike riders, because they're leaving those guys out to hover. They're just waiting for the last moment. They don't really want to chase them down themselves. They're just waiting for them to crumble so they can pull them back into the fold. But Team Omega Pharma Lotto, Phil, have done an excellent job today. They're trying to set this race up for their team leader, Philippe Gilbert, the champion of Belgium.
13 times Gilbert has won, and a lot of them on similar finishes as today, this year alone, so they've got the right to have all the confidence they need. But there's a lot of boys feel the confidence today, because there are no time bonuses as there are in races around the world, whereas the winner will receive a small amount of a second off his overall time for the day. So it quite literally means the man that wins will be, there's the devil, he's a bit far back today, Paul, will actually win the first yellow jersey.
Yep, that's the important thing. That's a different thing this year in the Tour de France. There are no time bonuses on the finishing line. There'll be no time bonuses out on the course. And the first man to cross the finishing line will become the wearer of the first yellow jersey. No prologue time trial either this year. Slightly different, and it will make it extremely interesting tomorrow as well, going into the team time trial around the small town of Les Essarts.
Time to pull up the white flag, because here come the whole of the Tour de France at 19 kilometers from the finish. They broke away in a kilometer one. They have been caught with just 19 kilometers left to go. No handshake, boys? Yes, I thought that would be the case. They help each other, but it hasn't worked. They're into the pack. They'll hang on for as long as they can, but I suspect they'll be the last three riders to make the finishing line today.
Well, you have to admit, they went out on their breakaway. They looked for a chance. They looked for an opportunity. Okay, it didn't work on this occasion. So sometimes during the Tour de France, I think this year we will see a number of times that the breakaway will survive.
I think you're absolutely right, Paul. This is going to be a very aggressive Tour de France, and a pretty exciting one too. We're looking at the Omega Pharma Lotto team now. 11 miles out, 18 kilometers from the finishing line. They've been the team which has put on the mast here that they've got the man they think can win. They've done the majority of the work. We're all together now at 18 miles to go. Anybody could go for an attack, and I think it won't be long before we see one. Just watching the riders here now. You can see now what the speed now, Paul, is around about 27, 28 miles an hour, and we're slightly uphill.
We are slightly uphill. This is the final ripple now, Phil, as we start to get to the top of this little false flat, and then we will drop down into the valley around Les Herbiers, scuttle across the valley floor, and then we'll line ourselves up for the finish to the top of the Mont des Alouettes. But look at that main field. They're all over the road.
Well, there's some of the roadside campers that parked up 2 days ago here for the best seat in the house, and now they're seeing the Tour go by. No doubt planning their 3-week holiday around France with a little tickle into Italy, where we go as well.
Well, I might have led you astray a little bit just earlier on. I told you that the highest spot of the race was the race finish at 232 meters. Well, in fact, just here, as we look here at the top of the Saint-Michel de Montmercure, that is the highest point of the region of the Vendée at 290 meters in altitude. And this site, probably they reckon, was the old place where people used to worship the moon. Which is way back in the Celtic days.
Just hope those people on there don't suffer from vertigo, because our helicopter's giving them a little bit of a check out as the Tour goes around the base here.
Interestingly enough, this is the only place in France nowadays whose name combines a mixture of both pagan and Christian cults.
The field is all together in the Tour de France now as they continue into the last 16.5 kilometers. Just over 10 miles to go to the finish now. Nobody has been able to get off the front of this bunch because the pace has been kept up since they brought back those three riders.
Well, they are ready now to line up. I think a little moment of respite before we start to see the big organisation. That's Stewie O'Grady in the middle, serious ambassador for the sport. Knocking out his 15th Tour de France this year, Phil. He's a man who's had so many ups and downs. He's pacing the man behind him. You might just notice there, that's Andy Schleck. Andy Schleck trying to keep up to the front of the peloton. He doesn't want to lose any time. He is now, not like the Tour of Switzerland, now he's completely concentrated on this 3 weeks.
And that's Juan Manuel Garate on the left of our picture. Remember him? He finished it all off on the top of Mont Ventoux in 2009. O'Grady just letting him know he's there. Stuart O'Grady riding his 15th Tour de France. Among the people who wished him well at the start this morning was Mike Grant, the Premier of South Australia, because O'Grady comes from Adelaide, and what a terrific ambassador he has been for his country and for the sport of cycling.
I noticed American Chris Horner moving up to the front end. Nobody looking after him. He's looking after his own responsibility to stay at the front end of the main field. Obviously, you can see the nervousness now in the faces of these riders as they realise we're inside now. We're looking to go just inside of 10 miles of racing, 16 kilometres to the finish.
Johan Gien is the first coloured cyclist to take part in the Tour de France, in second wheel there. And he became well known in South Africa this year with his win of the third stage of the Cell C Tour of South Africa, which he won in very, very windy conditions on the seafront in Port Elizabeth. He won't get those conditions up at the finish today, I can tell you. But on that particular sprint, he could hardly get out of the saddle. It was so windy.
Well, there was a big line of HTC High Road riders on the right-hand side of that main field, led by Bernie Eisel. They obviously realised this is a great day for them this afternoon. Trying to catch a glimpse to see whether or not they've got Matty Goss in front of Mark Cavendish or behind him.
So the field now continued to be driven on by Gen here from the Europe car team. Not surprisingly, Paul, because this is the company with the big interest in the area here of the Vendée. And they feel with Thomas Voigtler, they could deliver him to the summit as well. This is what I think we expected today. Voigtler wants to win this stage. He goes under 15 kilometers to go. Now, if you're not strong now, you cannot get to the front to deliver your sprinter up there.
Well, way back in 2004, Thomas Voigtler was the national champion of France. He came to the Tour de France and he grabbed the yellow jersey and he held on to it for 10 days. And later that year, he finished 20th in the Olympic road race in Athens. Now he's trying to get himself and grab himself not only a stage victory on the opening day of the Tour de France, but another yellow jersey.
And somebody just sent the message to the back of the race there, because that's the other Europe car rider, the last one at the back, who's trying to move back up towards the front to give them all a helping hand. 9 miles to go now, 14 kilometers from the finish. This is the back of the peloton now. You can see how hard it is now just simply to keep on to the chain of the riders here now. It is very, very grippy indeed. Look at the length of the long, thin line of riders.
Well, the rider second from the back there is Sandy Cassar. The rider popped right on the back is John Gadere of AG2R. These guys are the climbers, and they don't like this kind of speed at all.
Oh boy, this is not the place to be here now at the back, because they are driving at the front now as fast as they can go. And when they run out of energy, they simply get out of the way and make room for whoever sits behind them. This is eyes down for the finish now. 8.5 miles to go. The last mile is all uphill to the line. We'll take a break, but rejoin us as we go towards the end.
I'm Rob Eva. I'm with the SRAM News.
We're just 10 kilometers, that's just on 6 miles from the finish of the opening day of the Tour de France, and the whole field is together now. The pressure is being applied principally by about 5 teams just now to try and line up their strong men. I don't know whether to call them sprinters or climbers for this tricky finish at the end on the Mont, Les Monts d'Alouettes, which is the Skylark Hill. As we slip towards the back of the race now, this is Pierre Roland, who looks as though he's in the spot of bother now as he tails off the back of the field. Well, there's no doubt. Oh, and there's been, we're looking to the left here now as we see all of these riders here. Now, this is a massive pile-up, Paul. I just caught a glimpse of it outside of my eye, and that's just happened.
Well, let's have a look at where it's happened, because it's over on the right-hand side, and it's gone down very hard indeed, and that has blocked the main field. Wow. This is why, Phil, inside of the last 20 kilometres, you've got to ride in the front. Now, it's difficult to see just exactly whether or not any of the big leaders were involved in that accident there. And in fact, it was a spectator who just was standing too close into the road there, and a rider from Astana went down very hard. It actually looked like Alexander Vinokourov.
Well, let's hope there's nobody injured there, but that was a massive pile-up, and it's come at the most crucial stage of the charge for the finish and completely split the peloton here. Well, time now really does matter if any of the potential candidates of final victory. It happened on the right of the road there, and it looked as though a rider from Astana did clip the side of a spectator, and he ricocheted left, unfortunately, right into the pack, which took out a lot of riders. Now they've got to split.
Well, when the road gets blocked like that, the riders behind, they have to stop. Then they've got to get themselves back up to full speed. These guys are racing for the victory of the stage this afternoon. Again, this is why, Phil, all of the big leaders of the race, even if they don't want to try and win the stage, try a ride at the front end of the main field to avoid this. That was a very nasty crash. I didn't see what happened to the spectator, but everyone went down very hard.
Yes, and the trouble is it's caused a split. Now, the field at the front will continue to race here. They will not know the extent of that crash because they didn't see it. and they've got a split on the road now, and we're not sure who's been caught behind. If all of the favourites have been caught behind, fine, but if there's one that got into this lead group, there could be a bonus on the cards here.
Well, when the race is full on like this, it's very difficult to slow down. They've got the races in full race mode currently, and that's why we've seen such a big amount of damage being done by that crash. All of these riders caught out behind the crash are in scramble mode now. The leader, Phil, of Team Movistar, number 81, David Arroyo, he's going to lose himself a fair chunk of time here this afternoon. And riding through the town of Les Herbiers, it's going to be very difficult to organise the chase and get back into the pack.
It is, because there are parts of that town which is narrow. I'm not certain exactly the route we take. I remember taking that left-hand turn on a bicycle ride yesterday, I must say. 5 miles to go at the moment, or just over 7 kilometres. And these boys are now racing flat out. You can't stop a runaway at this stage of the race, whether they fall or not. There's some very determined faces here, not least Andre Greipel on the left of our picture.
Looking very mean, but on his wheel he's got Philippe Gilbert. Watch out for the man in the middle for Movistar there, Phil, with a slightly different band around the middle of his jersey. That is the Spanish national champion, Jose Rojas, a very good sprinter.
Now this, I think, will drop back to the chase here of a big peloton of riders as our motorcycle is trying to get us up to the front end to see the pictures up there. Now keep a very close eye as we pass riders here to see if any of riders of the stature of Frank Schleck or Levi Leipheimer, Chris Horner, have been caught back here, or indeed the man who's won this race for the past 2 years. Watch out for number 1, because that would be Alberto Contador.
Well, we're looking through all of these riders. It's always chaos when something like this happens. It's a scramble to get yourself back in. But if you're involved in an accident inside of the last 10 to 15 kilometres at speeds like this, Phil, it is almost impossible to get yourself back into the race.
So as we see the race now, they are 3.8 miles from the finish, and there is a very definite split on.
Thomas Vogler there in the green jersey. He's looking very nervous, looking left and right, staying right up in the first 4-5 positions. Also, Philippe Gilbert very comfortable on the right-hand side in the black, yellow and red jersey, champion of Belgium. I have to say, BMC Racing have done an excellent job in keeping Cadel Evans up at the front of the pack. That's why all of these other teams over the last few kilometres were riding near the front of the pack, not to win the stage, but to avoid an accident like that.
5.5 kilometres to go now. It is an absolute scramble to get the result of the first stage. There is Alberto Contador playing with his little radio piece. And now, I'm not sure where he is, but I think he might be on the offensive here to try and chase up to the lead group. He's got his whole team working for him. So Contador, like the day when we went down to La Grande Motte a couple of years ago, is losing seconds to men who may matter later on in the Tour de France.
When you're the man who's the defending champion, you've got to remain calm in a moment like this. This is only 1 day, Phil, out of 22 days of racing. It won't be good for his morale, but he can't panic. He can't push himself into the red zone. He's got to look around, use his team, and hope that maybe on the final ascent up to the line that he can try and pull back a few seconds. Now it's Radio Shack. Jaroslav Popovic on the front end of the main field with a big R on his shoulder. He is thinking about this. Hincapie in second, third position there on the left-hand side with the white glasses. He's looking over his shoulder. Come on, Cadel Evans, you can stay with me. This could be a very interesting point. We're looking here, Phil, 31 seconds Contador has lost at this point.
This is what you said earlier, Paul, because Cadel Evans was riding at the front to keep himself out of trouble, and it's not just kept him out of trouble at the moment, it's working in his favour. These are huge time gaps. When you've lost the Tour by 23 and you're half a minute ahead, that could be the Tour in 3 weeks' time. You just don't know at 2.7 miles to go.
This, Phil, is why Andy Schleck and his team were riding at the front end of the main field, because they know on the first day of the Tour de France it's nervous. They know there can be crashes left and right, and that has been what we've seen here. Richie Porte is in this group as well, number 5 there, the teammate of Alberto Contador. This Tour de France today could be going against Alberto Contador.
Well, Porte is there to support Contador, and that's what he's doing right now. He was riding close to him when the situation occurred. Radio Shack and BMC, the 2 American teams, and HTC High Road have got themselves in perfect position here. Remember, George Hincapie in his 16th Tour, he's seen it all before.
He has seen it all before, that is for certain, because now we can see BMC getting it worked up at the front. Third place there is Bernie Eisel, the Austrian rider. It's out to 36 seconds now for Alberto Alberto Contador. He's not going to pull back any of that time here, Phil, because these guys are full on for the stage victory here this afternoon. Andreas Kloden of Radio Shack has made the junction. All of the big leaders have been very attentive. It would appear to me only one man has been caught out, and that is the defending champion. He's in this group with 2 miles to go. Alberto Contador, there he is.
Well, it's I doubt it is going to get back now in less than 2 miles to go. He is 36 seconds behind. Remember last year, Schleck lost the Tour to Contador by 39 seconds. At the moment, Contador has almost lost that to Schleck on the road on the first day of riding. Thor Hushovd is the world champion. He has made the front group, by the way. Has Hushovd. This is the chase group. And it's 36 seconds behind, and these are climbers in the orange jerseys. These are the men from northern Spain, the Basques, and they climb mountains, and they'll need the hill coming to try and shut down the gap just a little bit.
Well, it's not being shut down at all, because it's now up to almost 40 seconds in about 10th position there in the white jersey with the band across the middle. You can see the man who's the world champion. That, of course, is Thor Hushovd.
Well, this has been an incredible turnaround at just about 8 kilometers from the finish. A crash has altered the destiny of the stage of the Tour de France. Well, it may not have done, because Philippe Gilbert is about 4th or 5th in the line here, and just on 2 kilometers from the finish.
Andre Greipel is not going for the win this afternoon. He's the man on the front. He's digging deep now to keep this pace nice and high, because in 3rd position, you've got Philippe Gilbert. In 4th position, you've got Thomas Voeckler. In 5th position, you've got Damiano Cunego.
Well, that was a huge effort by Greipel. It lasted about 100 meters because the big sprinter on the flat couldn't cope with the climb as we're now heading up towards the finish. This is all the pressure on the man in black now, and he's only got 2 men left in front of him, and Thomas Voeckler is there. And there's another crash here. We've gone back down the road. I'm not exactly sure where, but is this the Contador group in trouble again?
Well, there's a lot of riders are very nervous today, Phil. They really are taking all kinds of risks. It's the first day. We're looking here at inside of 3 kilometers to go. This group has been splintered completely as Philippe Gilbert is in 3rd place.
Now, that's going to be a difficult call for the referees, because the 3 kilometers to go rule will come into play, but the race was already split, so they're going to have to sort that one out, and we'll have to go with whatever they decide. But these are the attacks we expected to come now, and that is a good move to aid the man in 3rd place, Gilbert. He needed somebody to put a big move in.
Well, I tell you what, Katusha have put the big attack in, but Philippe Gilbert is sitting and waiting. I spoke to somebody just before the start about how to win this stage here. You've got to wait. You've got to bide your time right down to the last moment. Right up there in 3rd position. It looks like Rojas is looking very comfortable indeed. Not too far away in the green jersey. Thomas Voeckler is looking ready to see whether or not he can pounce. The Spanish national champion, Phil, in 3rd position. Rojas has got an incredible turn of speed, especially at the top of a climb like this. Cunego's in 4th.
Well, Philippe Gilbert there telling his teammate to keep the pressure on for as long as he can by shaking his head in 2nd place. He doesn't want to be at the front yet. We've got to watch the right here of the road, because this is also another, and that looks to me like the little figure of Alexander Vinokurov who's launched the attack. That was to be expected, and this is helping Gilbert. Voeckler has got 2nd wheel. Gilbert is 3rd. Hushovd is moving up as well. He's in about 6th place in the white jersey.
Bosenhagen is right up there as well, but here's Fabian Cancellara.
That is Fabian Cancellara, who has gone with a huge amount, and Gilbert recognised that one, because if Cancellara goes, you've got to counter. That is an absolute flyer, but you know, it's a long way to the finish off this bend as you sweep around the corner. Cancellara looking, and he's got trouble on his wheel. Gilbert does not want to go yet, but he may have no choice. He's got to jump and make it hard, because Cancellara is beaten by Cancellara. Gilbert kicks again. The champion of Belgium has got it. Well, he goes up towards the line now, and Cancellara, he made the move spot on, but Philippe Gilbert was right there in it. Now, can he hang on, Paul? Because this is desperate moments as Gilbert tries to hang on. He's got just about 500 meters to go.
They're coming up in 3rd place. Looks like Cadel Evans as well, because coming around this final corner, Philippe Gilbert really had the acceleration. He's got to keep going, though, because there's a long, interminable hill, and Cadel Evans is coming across the gap.
Oh, it's going to hurt the legs, but that's a result for Cadel Evans and for Philippe Gilbert. Win 14 for him. Cadel Evans has had a tremendous day. The favourite has got 2nd there, amongst the favourites, has got second on a day that Contador has lost time. That's a big start now as the clock continues to count now. The seconds go by. Well, this is going to be a very unusual overall classification tonight, but there's no doubt the first Maillot Jaune will go to Philippe Gilbert.
Well, this is the group that contains Alberto Contador, and what's important now is the Omega Pharma Lotto boys continue to celebrate. Stuart O'Grady being swamped there by Alberto Contador. They'll be a little bit surprised to see that, but the time gaps have appeared. There's Contador over on the right-hand side with the yellow sunglasses.
He grits his teeth. He's got to keep going. The clock is counting against him here. We don't know if he was delayed in that second crash. I didn't see him, so I think we're looking at real time, although that clock is telling me he has been delayed in that crash, but we don't know. As they race up towards the line now, this is a massive loss to last year's winner as they come up towards the line here now. So as they race up towards the line, that clock is enormous. Now, we don't know whether some of this, Andy Schleck is in this group as well. So at least Contador and Schleck go in tomorrow in the same time. It looks about a minute 20. Contador now knows this has been a grim day in the Tour de France for him. Andy Schleck alongside him. Bradley Wiggins is there as well. So the big names finishing there. What a game for Evans.
They must have been involved in that second crash because Bradley Wiggins was riding right at the front end of the main field. So I have a feeling that Andy Schleck and Bradley Wiggins went down in the second crash, but there's no doubt at all about the winner of the stage this afternoon, Philippe Gilbert of Belgium, and the champion to boot.
It was a tough old climb up there, I have to say, but Gilbert just about hung on as Evans came at him towards the end. But the big man to gain today is Cadel Evans, because he is a long-term prospect for Paris, and he's off to the perfect start with a second place. We'll have to wait and see the final time gaps, but on the face of it, they are very, very big, and they won't alter in the team time trial tomorrow, except we could see Cadel Evans in yellow.
Well, that was a dramatic run in towards the finish. Everybody said it was going to be a great first day of racing.
Well, just look at this now. There is the arrival of the champion. Isn't it fantastic? Your first day as a national champion of your country, and you win a stage of the Tour de France. Let's see if we can show you the results. Gilbert gets it by just 3 seconds over Evans. These are real time gaps. Thor Hushoff got third at the end of the day. He made his effort. Rojas fourth. Jurgen van der Broek, who worked a lot today, finished in fifth in the end. He's in sixth. Geraint Thomas in sixth place, rather. Cloden in seventh. Tarame, Chris Horner doing well today in ninth, and Tony Martin completing the top 10. All 6 seconds they lose to the man who won the day today. Gerdeman, who was off the back earlier, he was 11th. Frank Schleck was 12th, but his brother Andy has lost time today, that's for sure. Damiano Cunego, who finished second in the Tour of Switzerland, lost it on the final day. He is in 15th place. Well, we'll take a break, and when we come back, we'll try and sort out exactly what is happening. We'll certainly have podiums and interviews. See you in a moment.
And by Head Sweats, the world leader in performance headwear.
Well, welcome back to the Tour de France in the Vendée. What a finish we've had to the opening stage of this race. So let's have a look now at our Road ID Ride of the Day. And this is how it all panned out for the champion of Belgium. His first race in the colours of national champion. He won it exactly a week ago. Cancellara made the move. As Gilbert said, that was who he was expecting to make the move. Cadel Evans almost finished it off, but he didn't spoil a perfect day for Philippe Gilbert. He came home the stage winner, and he has certainly earned the title today of the Road ID Ride of the Day. Gilbert, the champion of Belgium, the winner and the first Maillot Jaune of the 2011 Tour de France. So there we are, that's our Road ID Ride of the Day, as he thanks his team for a job working perfectly. Well, I have to say that was perfect in the end, but halfway up it looked as though Cancellara made the move of the day, and in fact the man who really made the move of the day, thinking 3 weeks down the road, was the Australian Cadel Evans. Now, I've mentioned Cadel Evans. I can now tell you that Robbie Ventura is with Cadel. Let's see what he's got to say.
Incredible job of timing that finish, going across the gap. I know you're disappointed with second place, but talk us through those last Ks.
A little bit late. I had an opportunity to go, but I was being a bit conservative, knowing what the wind is like and knowing there's a lot of people ready to take advantage of someone hitting out early. K to go, 800 to go or something. And I saw Gilbert go just as I got closed in. Had to go again later, and yeah, it was good start. Happy to stay out of trouble. Maybe even get a few seconds on some of my competitors. That's a really good start to the tour. So,
Speaking of staying out of trouble, a lot of crashes. You guys were well positioned all day long. Did you know the chaos behind you?
Well, I kept hearing crash, but you know, that's all part of the first week of the tour, and that's why, you know, when the guys like George and Boogie and Mickey Shah, having those guys around you so key for this, especially stages like this. It's really key, and that's thanks all to them, because that was their work that got me to the bottom here, and then, you know, I really only had to do the last K or two.
A great start to this year.
You got to be really happy with that. I think Contador might have lost time.
Well done, Cadel. I mean, he always is emotional, but that was a result for the whole team there. It's an American team, of course, and George Hincapie, Big George, who equals Joop Zoetemelk this year with 16 tours under his belt. That's the record. And he was the strong man bringing him to the base of the mountain. You can't take talent away, can you? And Evans has unwittingly stolen a big march in this race over his main rivals. And let's have a look then at the Michelob Ultra overall standings now. Tonight, it'll reflect the stage result as well, of course, which will show Philippe Gilbert will be the rider in yellow. I'm not sure where they are at the moment, but I think they're coming now. Here they are. The Michelob Ultra overall standings at 3 seconds to Cadel Evans, 6 to Hushoff, 6 to Rojas, and 6 to Jurgen van den Broek. A lot of people think Van den Broek can make the podium in Paris. Belgians don't normally climb, but this man really can. Finished high up there last year. Geraint Thomas had a good start as well as Andreas Kloden on Team Radio Shack. Chris Horner was in there. He said he's up for it. Looking a little bit further down, Frank Schleck hung on. He's 6 seconds in 12th place. Voigtler is 6 seconds back. David Miller, who was the big lead-out man in there for Thor Hushoff, hung on for 16th place. Cancellara slipped to 18th in the end. This is all overall standings now. And Nicholas Roach, the Irishman, is 19th. So as we continue to look around, don't forget to tune in today to NBC, and we'll update you there at 2 p.m. Eastern time, by the way, of the complete story of the Tour de France today. This has been an exceptional day. It all happens towards the end, of course. Tomorrow we have the team time trial, which is based at Les Essarts, which is not very far from where we're commentating at the moment, maybe 12-15 miles or so. And it's the team time trial, a crucial day in all of the lives of the men who have ambitions to win this Tour de France overall. A very important stage indeed. It's on narrow roads, tortuous roads. It's not very far, 23 kilometers, but it's a tough one. And don't forget, today there's more coverage of Stage 1 of the Tour de France. 2 p.m. NBC. The most epic race ever will continue tomorrow morning live at 8 Eastern with Stage 2. That's the team time trial. And for more on the Tour de France, then off you pop to NBCSports.com. It's been a great day of cycling to open up the Tour de France today. We really have enjoyed it, and I think we're in for a good one. Highlights, don't forget, on NBCSports.com. Where we bring you up to date there. Our clothing provided by Peter Miller. The Tour de France now really is very much underway with the defending champion Alberto Contador already on the defensive after a stage which brought him to a little hill outside Les Herbiers. Blue skies previewed for tomorrow as well. Congratulations to Philippe Gilbert. Commiserations to those that fell off. We'll be back with you tomorrow. From everybody on the team here, it's goodbye from all of us. We'll see you in the team time trial. And don't forget, it's NBC at 2 p.m. for all the updates. We'll see you tomorrow.